say first watch?
Hello, welcome to an all-new episode of the First Watch podcast. I'm Zach, and I'm here with Cole and Morgan, and today joining us is Ryley for the second part of our, I guess it's ultimately going to be three parts after one battle after another comes out, but two-part preparatory career of Paul Thomas Anderson, just taking a few of them, not necessarily going all the way into it. But this week we're talking about a couple that do connect to one battle after another because they are each adaptations of Thomas Pynchon novels. We're going to talk about, even though this is the reverse of the order that they came out in, we're going to talk about Inherent Vice, and then we're going to talk about The Master, two movies that kicked off the 2010s for PTA, two strange tonal departures after his brush up with Oscar nomination glory there with 2007's There Will Be Blood. So we're going to find some threads to pull and things to talk about there. So we're going to start off with our guest, Ryley, and let us know, what have you been watching recently?
I'll start with what I've been playing recently because it's the most recent thing, and then I'll circle back to some of the recent movies I've seen. Hollow Knight Silk Song has been one of the most anticipated games of recent years, really. I was going to say this year, but it's been anticipated for a very long time. It's been in development for a very long time, and
And
now
we
it's
were
finally
only
come out.
sure, and we were only sure that it was going to be out this year, like 2 weeks before it did in fact come out.
Right.
I always had faith. I always believed, but it was really, really funny the way that it all came about. They basically threw up their hands and said, we were just having fun making it. Sorry.
It,
There was no
it's
drama
it's
behind that.
it's really funny because Supergiant with Hades 2 have done the exact same thing.
Mm.
Pretty
And
sure that was first announced in 2019, right? Silk Song?
Silk Song,
yeah,
yes, was
yeah.
first announced in 2019. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think at that point they had even been working on it for a while, and by all accounts they had the bulk of the game made like 3 years ago, and then they spent the intervening time. Well, what they said was they spent the intervening time kind of fleshing it out, but once you actually play the game, believe me, you can tell why it took so long to make. This is a colossal game, and like Hollow Knight, which is a game where you can kind of proceed through it re without even finding a bunch of its content. Like so, Team Cherry, the Australian team who made these games, they are like they're more than happy to make content that's completely missable or to uh, focus their kind of philosophy of game design around like discovery and like rewarding discovery and rewarding curiosity, which is something I love as a game design philosophy. Is always is this thing that unites a lot of my favorite games is this idea that you discover your curiosity leads to discovery, and that is what leads to the rewards specifically. And there's a lot of things you can miss if you don't have that sense of curiosity about the world. And Silksong is no exception to that. It's an absolutely colossal game that continues to reveal layers of itself the further deep I get into it. It took me about 60 hours to roll credits on the game, only to discover that after rolling credits, without spoiling too much, there is a wealth of additional content that only then becomes unlockable if you roll credits with the true ending, quote unquote. But it's an amazing game. I absolutely love it. There's been a lot of discourse, I suppose, around the difficulty of the game has been the main point of conversation. And look, it is a really, really hard game. It's a punishing game. At times, it is a cruel game. I don't necessarily agree with all of the design decisions that feed into that difficulty and how it manifests, but I will say it's never stopped being really, really fun. Uh, for me, like I really, really enjoy the challenge. If you are a person who enjoys more challenging games, more difficult and punishing games, obviously there's a lot of FromSoft influence in that regard, feeding into this, even though it is a sort of 2D Metroidvania game. Um, yeah, you'll absolutely have a blast with it. It's a really like it's a game that pushes you and sort of demands excellence from you, but also gives a lot of interesting ways to manipulate your build and design your own way around its many problems. So yeah, it's been a really really good game. I won't get too far into it because I could talk about this game for hours, but just yeah, it gets a big stamp of endorsement from me. I think it's going to filter out a lot of people who jump onto it from hype, but aren't
Mhm.
necessarily fans or all
Get
that
into it for like the
taken with
art
the original game.
or that
Yeah,
like Cuphead thing. where somebody
Mm,
looks at it and they're like, oh, this looks fun, it looks cute, it looks interesting. I like this
mm.
little character, this little, I don't even know what to call her. Hornet is her name, but I don't
Yeah.
know what that creature is.
I think a lot of assumptions feed into it. Being an indie game, there's a
Hmm.
certain set of expectations around like what indie games are that they don't tend to be more difficult, which is in itself a kind of ludicrous stereotype. There's some very, very brutally difficult indie games,
I think it
but people
comes from the
assume that it's
idea that difficulty, if you go back to the 8 or 16-bit era of video games or arcade era of video games, by ratcheting up difficulty or making scaling difficulty, you can take a fairly simple gameplay loop and a fairly short game and extend it for a really long time. If you play Super Mario Brothers, the original game, like in a straight through way with no mistakes, you're probably going to finish it in a couple hours. But odds are, because you have to like fail and do it over and over and over and over again, you're going to get more like 5 to 8 to 10 hours out of it until you can get there. So I think that's where that comes from a little bit, is the indie boom one chasing after some of those trends, like chasing, not that sounds like it's cheap, but trying to kind of take it back to that style and that a way to appreciate games, but also realizing that that is a way that you can take something like Hades, which has a very simple thing, and you repeat it over and over, and that's a roguelite style, which is obviously associated with these indie things as well. But like the idea that the difficulty is what keeps you coming back and having to kind of uh, master it in order to get through a shorter amount. And then Hollow Knight's not
mm,
really like that. It's obviously very expansive, but I think that all of that is kind of bundled together.
I think
mm,
part of it's like the aesthetic probably leads you to believe that it's going to be like, 2D Zelda difficult.
Hmm.
And it's a little more, I don't want to say intentional, but it's a little more focused on the combat
Hmm.
than Zelda
absolutely.
tends to
And
be.
it's a lot faster moving. Like the general movement and the combat is a lot faster moving, even than Hollow Knight, which is a game where you can kind of like be a little bit more measured in how you approach things. And there's a lot of kind of breathing room in combat encounters compared to this game, where it's just like it's intense, it's visceral. There's often like multiple enemies that you're fighting at once. It's a lot about negotiating space. Obviously, both games have huge platforming elements, and that I would say is emphasized even more strongly in
Hmm.
Silksong, to the extent that there are obviously like really cool, really awesome platforming set piece sections, but that the philosophy of platforming and of mastering your movement and the way you have to do in platforming sections is also applied to
Hmm.
combat encounters as well. You spend a lot of the time like negotiating the space within the arena, both sort of on the ground and in the air and on the sides, and positioning yourself not only to avoid getting hit, but also to be able to execute certain moves, which are going to kind of create an effect in a certain direction and across a certain space. And you want to be able to maximize the impact of that to destroy multiple enemies, sort of thing. So there's a lot of precision and a lot of kind of strategy that's happening at a very kind of fast-paced, immediate level. And of course, it's punishing in the sense that you can die really, really quickly in Silksong. And rest points are not necessarily as plentiful as maybe some people would like them to be. Sometimes I agree with that complaint, sometimes I don't. It's a big game. There's a lot going on there, and it's very understandable to see why a lot of people have bounced off of it, especially because you're coming directly from Hollow Knight, even though from my perspective, its difficulty is a logical next step from the in-game difficulty of Hollow Knight. A lot of people
Hmm.
are just expecting something that is a lot more relaxing than what Silksong is. And it makes sense when you play the game that it is the way it is, because you can move a lot faster. You have a lot more kind of possibilities in terms of how you
Hmm.
approach things. Hornet's a much more dynamic character. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would just say, the one piece of advice I would give, and some people this can sound like a cop out as well, because when you meet a challenge, a lot of gamers want to just kind of conquer the challenge. They focus in on the thing in front of them. But it truly is a game where if you're struggling with something, you can always, always go somewhere else. There is almost invariably more than one way to get somewhere. And it's sometimes even major stumbling block bosses or moments that seem like they must be required to proceed actually have secret ways of getting around them if you continue exploring the world as well, which is one of the things I love about it. It creates a lot of different individual experiences that people can have with the game in terms of the order in which they do things and see things. It's an extremely the possibilities for having a unique experience with this are really endless, which I love. It's a really good game. I'm deep in, I guess, the end game of it now, and still discovering new ways of playing, let alone new like items and bosses and enemies and things like that. So yeah, it's been really, really, really fun. In terms of movies, last month, August, was a great month for me in terms of movies because we had the New Zealand International Film Festival come like across the country. And I was fortunate enough to be involved in the selection for some of the films in the festival as well. I was one of many people. I don't want to overstate my role, but I got to help. Like I got to view some screeners, got to help decide on what's on some of the films that they brought in. And but ultimately, a lot of what I saw at the festival itself were high profile releases that I certainly wouldn't have been able to see ahead of time. But yeah, some of the highlights were well, okay, so the opening night film was Jafar Panahi's It Was Just an Accident, the Palme
Mm.
d'Or winner, and that was absolutely flooring. I mean, I have some pretty big gaps in Panahi's filmography that I need to catch up on. I really love Tehran Taxi. I really love This Is Not a Film, but a lot of his other movies I haven't seen that I do need to catch up on. But this, for me, is like the most impressed I've been with him in terms of the mastery of tone and the presentation of a simple kind of morality tales style of story that has these kind of like very obvious political applications to real world situations in Iran. And I mean beyond there as well. I mean, there's actually a kind of an Asghar Farhadi-esque quality to the moral dilemma of this movie that I really, really enjoyed as a huge Farhadi fan. Um, and yeah, and it's fantastic. I don't want to say too much about it story wise because it's one of those things where it has a very simple story, but it gets a lot out of the way that it reveals what happens to you, the way you learn what is happening in the fuller context of things is really, really great. It's a very poignant and sort of like emotionally affecting movie, but there's also a lot of situational comedy elements to it as well. There's this sort of farcical aspect to I guess I'll give a little bit about the plot away just to illustrate, but the central dilemma of the movie essentially is the protagonist of the movie captures someone whom he believes to be the perpetrator of atrocities, but isn't 100% sure if he has the right person. And so there's this process of trying to verify his identity, this negotiation between like how much do I want to actually interact with this person? There's a surprising amount of the movie in which the person in question is not even interacted with. It's just sort of like not part of the narrative, but is also like there. Um, and there are these farcical elements in terms of like how different characters come into the picture to interact and try to verify the identity of this person. And it leads to a really, really sort of stirring final section. Great movie, absolutely one of the highlights of the festival for me. I think one of the things that really struck me about it is that Panahi, obviously someone who has had to, for a lot of his career, make movies with like kind of strict limitations, essentially, because a lot of his career spent making movies has been, you know, movies that have not been sanctioned by the Iranian government that he's had to make sort of covertly, and so have had a lot of technical limitations. And certainly, I mean, you can tell it was just an accident as a movie that's made on a low budget and it's not a, you know, there's no frills, but there's just a really great level of like interesting formalism in the compositions and the camera movements and the edit and the way that the space is navigated with the small cast of characters. To me, like there was a lot more going on visually and stylistically with the movie than I was expecting. I was expecting something that was going to be, in some ways, compromised by those limitations, but it wasn't at all. It was just really, really like stirring and striking and memorable in all the right ways. So that was a big standout for me. I don't think anyone else here has seen this yet. But please jump in if I mention a movie that you have and I have forgotten that you have. I didn't think so. I will try and I'll go through a few. I won't talk about all of them. Another huge standout of the festival for me was Joaquin Trier's Sentimental Value, another huge, critically acclaimed film. I actually, again, like Panahi, I've seen some Trier films like Oslo 31st of August, and I watched a little bit of Worst
Mhm.
Person in the World, but never actually finished it. So I was a little bit like, I'm coming into this not a clear idea
I
of
think
Trier
Colin
as a
just made a face
filmmaker.
at me making a face.
Yeah. Um, But no, I really I loved this. This movie was just like this was the closing night movie of the festival actually.
Mm.
Um, and this one absolutely like really, really fantastic film. Fantastic central performances. Obviously, Stellan Skarsgård is always great, but he has this
Mm.
sort of like it's a very Stellan Skarsgård's role. He's sort of like grumpy and curmudgeonly old guy. But essentially he's playing a filmmaker who's sort of in a obviously in a late career sort of era where everything that he does and all the work that he creates is kind of like painted narratively within the realm of this is an old person sort of confronting his mortality and reflecting on his life. And the movie is primarily about the relationship he has with his daughters, one of whom is played by Renata. How do you say her name, dude?
I've always said
It's
Reinsve.
yeah, it's Renata
Reinsve. Okay.
Reinsve.
That sounds right.
Renata Reinsve. Okay, see. Yeah, good, good. I'll go with you guys. So one of whom is played by Renata Reinsve in a fantastic performance. She's always great in everything that
Mm.
she's in. Um, and yeah, and this is a movie that has a lot of sort of playful melding of the metafiction within the story. He's making a movie that's sort of inspired by his relationship with his daughters and his family history, also his relationship with his mother as well, where there's some serious trauma that's alluded to. And there's a lot of sort of, you're filling in the gaps of this family history based on micro expressions and little moments of interaction between him and his daughters and the people who are left in this family essentially. And I love that sort of thing. I love that sort of thing where you're assembling a lot of the pieces of this family history based on the tone of these scenes and these sequences and the things that are alluded to. It's not like super elliptical, but there's enough sort of mystery there that gives a lot of evocative emotional weight to the scenes and the things that he's choosing to include in this movie that he's making, and then this negotiation he has with his own daughters about it, as well as the American starlet played by Elle Fanning, who's fantastic. She's great and everything as well. I think this is probably the most I've liked her in anything as well. Just a really, really fantastic film. It has a really like affecting sort of rug pull ending moment that really, really stuck with me, and I think like left the audience in a bit of shock as well. Um, and
Mm.
yeah, it just really, really impressed me and stood out to me as one of the best films of the year for sure, along with the Panahi. A couple of other ones I'll mention as well. I saw the new Kelly Reichardt film, The Mastermind, with Josh O'Connor. I really enjoyed this movie. I mean, I'm a sucker for basically everything that Reichardt does, and Josh O'Connor is he's fantastic in everything as well. What's great about this is that yeah, O'Connor's great in it, but it's very much a movie in which everyone is directed in a particular way to underperform.
Mm.
Reichardt is sort of like it's a sort of there's this like level of humor in this movie that's so deadpan, that's so unbelievably like below the surface. And Josh O'Connor's basically this sort of disillusioned father set in 1970s Boston, I think. And he's sort of disillusioned with his life. He has sort of no sense of passion or excitement in anything that he does. His relationship with his family is uh, frosty. He struggles to connect with his son. He has absolutely no chemistry with his wife, who a small role, but like again, I can't express the degree to which the direction is so like it just makes it perfect. Alana Haim plays his wife, and
Ah.
basically uh, Reichardt directs her to basically be miserable and quiet and scowling at him in every scene. She barely speaks a word. And it's just like hilarious because it's this sort of complete inverse of her general energy as a performer and personality. She's just kind of
Mm.
like stone-faced. Um, and it's funny because it's sort of like you forget that she's even there, which is effective because it's sort of how the protagonist, how O'Connor's character views his own family as well.
Anna
But yeah,
Paquin in The Irishman moment.
well that's but even then, like she's given more to do than Alana Haim is in the Mastermind. It's just sort of it's a very it's a movie that has a really like strong deadpan sense of humor that will completely go over the heads of I suspect most of the general audience who see it. But it has some really great moments and this sort of leisurely languid pace where it's sort of like very Reichardt in the sense that you're sort of following this person in real time as some inciting incident sort of occurs that they go through, and then it's just sort of this really low key aftermath where they're slowly sort of like just it didn't go the way that they hoped it would, and they're sort of like um experiencing the aftermath of that in a very sort of like hapless way where bad goes to worst, but yet like nothing really seems to change on an emotional level. It's a difficult film to describe, and I suspect that it won't connect with all audiences. If you're a fan of Reichardt, I think you'll get the vibe she's going for, the sense of humor that she has, the commentary on masculinity and sort of family structures that's kind of buried within this as well. I really, really enjoyed it. I wouldn't say necessarily that it's high tier Reichardt, certainly not compared to things like Mix Cutoff or First Cow, for instance. But it's always great when she comes out with something. I still have to watch Showing Up. I still haven't seen that. I'm really bad at being a fan of these directors sometimes. But I really enjoyed The Mastermind. Another film I'll shout out is Richard Linklater's Blue Moon. This one really took me by surprise as well. Richard Linklater, obviously a great filmmaker. Hey, he makes a lot of movies, and you don't necessarily, his hit rate can be a bit up and down depending on. I think he gets taken with an idea, or he finds a script he really, really likes, makes it really quickly, and sort of moves on to the next thing. Except for when he takes 20 years to make a movie, but that's a different thing entirely. This is a really interesting movie. So it's from a script by Robert Kaplow, and it's about the former like lyrical partner of Richard Rodgers before he teamed up with Oscar Hammerstein, Lorenz Hart, who's played by Ethan Hawke. And the movie essentially is set on the night at which Rodgers and Hammerstein's huge success Oklahoma premieres for the very first time. That's the first production that Rodgers has made without Hart, the first in the Rodgers and Hammerstein partnership. And so basically the movie is this sad, like dejected and very sort of socially stunted person experiencing the success of his former creative partner with a new partner, and essentially just sitting at the bar for 90 minutes sort of rambling about his feelings and about his like trying to crack jokes and that's what it is. That's the whole movie is 90 minutes basically in real time of just Ethan Hawke vamping, for lack of a better word, just completely going. It's very tightly scripted, and you can tell because there's a lot of like strong wit and sort of poetry to the dialogue. But it is very much just like this bitter old drunk kind of yelling about his talent and his life, and this like absurd mixture of like extreme self-awareness but also like complete unfettered narcissism that he manages to kind of balance together at the same time. It's an incredible performance. I think it's probably the best performance I've ever seen Ethan Hawke give, maybe purely as a product of being the most he's ever had to do. Like there's just so much going on in this performance, and it is the whole movie. And I really, really enjoyed it. I think some people will find it maybe a little bit indulgent and insufferable. But to me, like I connected absolutely and completely with what Linklater was trying to do and how he portrayed this character. And the script is just so whip smart. It's so funny. It's just so effortlessly like lyrical. It really is like it feels like you are spending time with someone who has spent their entire life sort of writing lyrics to show tunes basically, and has come to use their sort of poetic sense for rhythm and timing and their like sense for comedy as well as a total crutch against all of their weaknesses and failures. And I thought it was a really, really strong film. And I'll just mention one more film, which was my absolute highlight of the entire festival and my film of the year. Honestly, possibly my film of the decade so far, and that is By Guns Resurrection, the long-awaited follow-up to his critically revered and
masterful 3D film, Long Day's Journey into Night. Resurrection is not in 3D, but it is in basically every way a movie can be, and basically every way the follow-up to that movie can be, more visually striking, ostentatious, ambitious, stunning. Was one of those experiences for me that you get to have in a cinema maybe like once a decade or maybe twice a decade, where it's just sort of like you're seeing something that you've never seen before. Basically, you're seeing the medium, like familiar, recognizable elements of the medium, kind of twisted and contorted into brand new shapes. And the amazing thing about what Gunn does with this movie is that he does that multiple times with multiple different forms. It's to use a piece of critical shorthand, which is kind of an annoying cliche at this point. It is a love letter to cinema, truly. I mean, it starts out with this like silent era sequence, which is just like it's like 4K, but also perfectly evokes the look and feel and the way that silent era films were shot in the teens and 20s. And the coloring is perfect. And then it kind of just like jumps forward into this kind of cyberpunk aesthetic thing in the second section. Structurally, I should probably give it a little bit more context. What this film is it's essentially a series of vignettes. It's basically presented as various different lifetimes in the life of this figure who's referred to, I think, as the dreamer, who basically goes through various different lives and assumes different forms in different eras, and then goes to sleep and moves into the next era. There's a whole lore to this. There's a whole like very futuristic sci-fi explanation of this context, which is actually given to you in like title cards right at the beginning of the movie, and the context of that silent cinema section, where so the whole context of this sort of like cyberpunk sci-fi setting is explained to you. But then from that point onwards, as the movie sort of moves from one vignette to the next, it's basically just like you're on your own. You're adrift at sea, trying to follow these individual stories, or some of which are like barely narratives, some of which are just kind of these pure experiential rushes of like recurring images and motifs that carry through these individual stories. The second, I think it's the second story, is the most kind of confounding of them all. Like I found it very, very difficult to follow, but it was extremely kind of like fast moving and fluid and had these really kind of striking visual elements to it. And then it moves into another story, which is much more conventional and easy to follow, about this father and daughter con team. It's very sort of Paper Moon inspired. And then it moves to another section, which is sort of like heavily influenced by Buddhist scripture, I think. And then it goes to another section, and you go through these different vignettes with the same character in these various different roles. And then it gets to this final section, which is like the crowning achievement. It's, I think, a 30-minute single take sequence, which moves
Sounds
through an
right.
entire. The longer this went on, and I've seen Long Day's Journey into Night, right? I know he likes to do this, but the longer this went on, the more I couldn't believe it was real. Like the more I thought this has to be a 1917 thing where there are invisible cuts, and he's just stitching them together. As far as I can tell, that's not the case. He did this, I think, in three attempts, and it was like a Russian arc thing where it
Yeah,
was
the
like this is
Sokurov.
Yeah.
yeah, where it was like, we need to get this, or we're spending another $10,000. But like it's incredible. It in ways that like actually make sense, but that I don't want to spoil. It moves through an entire evening in real time, but also only in 30 minutes, and it's like this incredible sort of vampire romance narrative, and it has all of these different like really cool things going on. It's one of those movies where like you attempt to describe it, and the more like rational you try to make it, the less you're actually describing the experience of watching the movie, which is so like
So much
it's
of
one
the
of those things where like
magic's in that broth of the filmmaking, the editing, the
yes,
images. Yeah.
and it's one of those things where it's like this is one of those movies where this is the only medium it could possibly work in. Like this
Right.
wouldn't work as a novel, this wouldn't work in any other format. And so in that sense, it takes full advantage of all of the unique aesthetic and artistic opportunities that working in cinema offers you, and just kind of like pushes them like to the absolute brink of the formal convention and then kind of tries to come up with a bunch of new shit on top of it. It's an unbelievably impressive movie, is how I'll put it. And it's impressive without like, it's not trying to do things for the sake of doing them. Like it has this real embedded sense of um, love for cinema and like a desire to tell a really interesting story and follow a really unique character in a way that takes full advantage of all of the storytelling opportunities that the structure and the form offer. It has a lot of emotion to it, has a lot of heart to it, has an incredible sense of scale to it. Yeah, along with Memoria, this is my favorite film of the decade so far. I sat there like absolutely stunned, unable to move as it was finishing, and just kind of processing it and gathering it together. And that's like, whenever you get to have an experience like that in a cinema, that's really, really special. I'll remember it for a really, really long time. Uh, I don't know if this is obviously this is going to get hopefully a reasonable amount of theatrical distribution, but I don't know what it will be like. It's not like, I think I get the vibe that for some festival audiences and festival juries it's a little too much to be like, getting all the big awards, but if you get an opportunity to see this in the cinema, absolutely do it. I mean, obviously do it however you can do it. If you need to wait for the Blu-ray, then do that. But it's, yeah, really, really, really impressive cinema, and really reignited my sense of like possibilities for what the medium can do, which is really, really nice feeling to have. So yeah, and those were the highlights of my festival experience. Really, really, I feel really, really privileged that I got to see all those movies, and I'm really excited for you guys to get to see them too.
Yeah,
There's
That's
Cole,
awesome.
Cole will get resurrection singular.
Yeah. I am actually attending the North American premiere of Resurrection in 2 weeks' time. So
Zach will probably
Awesome.
get it. I probably
It's
won't.
January, right? I'll get it
Yeah.
like
yeah,
once the dust is settled, I'll get it. But
yeah.
yeah, I was just thinking it's been a good movie year in the sense that there have been some movies that I enjoy, like that's wow, what a high bar. No, I mean, looking at the
I
list
know
early
exactly what
on,
you mean though, Zach. I mean, I
movie
haven't seen as much as
years,
you, but
I was
yeah.
just joking around about how Dallas will get this later, right? We get a lot of stuff. We got Brutalist, Zone of Interest, all that stuff. Like we got it in January. That happens because the movie year, the release calendar for the real shit, for like the real shit, starts in nowish and then extends through the beginning of next year. This is where it kicks in. So to get anything of legitimate value out of the first part of it is usually the sign of a healthy, good movie year. It means your blockbusters hit. It means your studio fair hit. And I would say that that's true, but I just have so little in the vein. Basically, I'm not as high on Sinners as most people are. I don't know if most, but a lot of people are. I feel like right now I have nothing that's like up on top. Last year I had like Evil Does Not Exist, or like The Beast had come out. I just feel like there hasn't been a ton of that. They're out there, but like April didn't really get a theatrical release here. I know that's out and about somewhere that I could go see it, but point being, it's nice to know that there is food. It's been ordered. It's in the truck. He's on the way. It's hot. It's fresh. It's tasty. I'm hungry.
And even outside of festivals, somebody cooked $150 million meal with Warner Brothers and
Indeed.
released it in VistaVision.
Indeed.
Although, well, he filmed it in VistaVision, but only released it in VistaVision in like 2 theaters.
Well,
Well,
four theaters, and
Yeah,
well,
4.
there's not a lot of VistaVision projectors left. That's the
That's
real
true.
problem.
Yeah.
Right.
We if we want to project movies in a certain format, we need to build the projectors again because we have lost that art form.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to him talk about this we're jumping ahead a little bit, I guess, but I was listening to him talk about this with The Master because that was shot on 70,
Mhm.
and in like 2012 he was talking about this, like we don't like all the theaters sold their projectors for scrap metal, so like we can get this in a very small handful of areas in
Mhm.
the format it was quote unquote intended to be
Yeah.
seen in.
Well, I think that even though it is jumping ahead, that does connect to this idea of just how things are released. And I I think festivals are cool. I have no qualms with festivals, but it can sometimes be frustrating to think like, because what a festival is, it's an opportunity to show off the movie, distributor picks it up, then it gets a release. Usually that release happens sometime in this, again, like fall to winter
Mhm.
type of timeline, so that
Yeah.
people can see it, it can compete for awards, etc. But it can be frustratingly exclusive when it's LA in North America, it's Los Angeles, it's New York,
Hello.
it's Toronto a little bit for the Toronto International Film Festival. Chicago gets a little bit, and then just like it's an interesting thing,
Telluride,
especially
Chicago has
because
a really good lineup this year.
as a person
Sundance,
who
God rest his
lives
soul.
in, I think DFW is like a top 5 film market in the United States, but we are not the film market for this, right? We're a top 5 film market because we really get out and go see a Fast and the Furious, or we really get out and go see some Indian blockbuster. That's what does really well here. What does not do really well here is like Poor
Mhm.
Things, for instance. Poor Things was like a little mini hit, and no one here saw that shit. So Dallas is like we're in a weird state of like, we have a lot of people that will go, but only to certain types of things.
And there is a little bit of an irritance for me when I have to report on like everything I saw at a festival, and though I can't talk about it with you guys until
Right.
like months after the fact.
And you're
Although
like,
of
oh
course
yeah, I
I
kind
still
of remember that. Yeah.
of course I still love the exclusivity. I mean, I moved here partially for that reason.
For sure. But it's no, it's tough. I mentioned Poor Things there. That was a movie that I got to see at like an advanced like testing screening that
Mhm.
Disney 20th was doing. And I remember being frustrated on like the gag order. It's like I couldn't write a review of this. No one else had seen it. And it was like it almost kind of, I know that movie sort of went down in my overall estimation. And I almost wonder if that's why, because there was just none of that usual
Well, I
camaraderie,
think
get
the
to share it
quality of the
around.
movie had more to do with that than anything else.
We don't have to get into all that today. But
Ryley is typing.
but it is that trade-off. It's the trade-off of like, not having the monoculture stuff. And it might just speak to how film is more of a boutique experience than it's ever
Oh,
been.
yeah. You know, audiences get more niche. You have to
Mhm.
find that niche. You have to make money off of them somehow.
Yep.
And, that's why I'll be talking about Radu Jude's Dracula next week. And, God knows
That's
we'll be able
right.
to see that.
Ah, my boy, my Romanian son. Morgan, what you got?
I'm just gonna shout out The Long Walk. That's about the only thing new or interesting that I've seen. Hello. There he went. There she went. There they went. Uh, very good. Easy top 10 King adaptation material there. Uh,
Richard Bachman.
yeah.
They will be
Uh,
wanted.
they did in fact be walking. Uh, I so there's a lot of like death game movies even in this particular
Mhm.
director Francis Lawrence's oeuvre.
Indeed.
There hasn't been one like this, where because I guess spoilers, but at one point you see diarrhea coming out of one of the dude's asshole, and then a soldier shoots him in the head, and it does not cut away for any of that. So there's not really any safeties on for this movie, and that can get super repetitive, and it risks
Mhm.
doing so at several points, but what it really relies on is the camaraderie that builds between the characters, and in particular, the performances given by the actors playing the characters. Because it is just a lot of the cameras in front of these two or three or four guys, and they are walking and talking. And then every now and then it cuts to a kid getting a Charlie horse and getting his brains blown out. Shout out Jojo Rabbit Kid. Uh, and and then it goes back to them freaking out for a little bit, and then they keep walking. But what keeps the momentum always going with that is the two excellent performances at the center of it in Cooper Hoffman and especially David Johnson, who
Yeah.
I am now fully on the train of. I've seen
He's the guy
first.
that plays the android in Alien, the new one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
the only good thing about that movie.
exactly.
Um, so there's those two. And this is Hoffman's best work so far by a good clip, I think. I like him in Licorice Pizza, but it's also like the character's a little like eh to me. Um, and it's really those two at the center and a whirling uh casts to get picked off one by one, basically. And a lot of those cast members are well characterized and well performed. Uh, but it is the main two at the center and completely carried by them. I really, really enjoyed this. It's one of the few King adaptations that I haven't read the source material for.
Mm.
So I was
I've
excited to
heard
step
good
in.
things. I
Yeah,
didn't really, I mean, obviously I've known this movie's coming out. I knew it was based on Stephen King, but I thought it was going to be like The Monkey and based off some short story I hadn't heard of. And it's a full-fledged novel that's like 400 plus pages. Just the concept feels very
yeah,
short story-esque to me. But then when I
I
started looking into it, because you know, it doesn't have the rep, it doesn't have the acclaim. So I was looking into it, and I mean, people are really high on it. The people that have read it have a lot of great things to say about it.
yeah,
So
and
this was,
and
I
that
think,
and
this
that
was, I
that
think, technically
largely,
one of the. Sorry to interrupt. I was going to say this was, I think, technically one of the first books that King ever
yeah,
published, even though
He
it was a
did, yeah.
Bachman book.
Mhm.
I always get this mixed up with the Running Man. Is it just me?
yeah,
They have
well,
they have
yeah.
slightly,
Also
and they're
coming
both
out this
being
year.
adapted this year. Exactly. Shout out to Edgar Wright, who might hopefully get back on the horse with that one. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, I always
Inshallah.
get they have such similar like
Been off that horse
conceits
for a
in.
long time.
Shut up.
Yeah.
well,
You
you
I
know.
think I
you tell
did
us one,
read
right?
this. I think I
Yeah.
read this when I got the Bachman books in school, but I have no
Mhm.
Mhm.
memory of it
What are the
whatsoever, so
other
I might not
Bachman?
have
So
actually read
Running
it.
Man is also Bachman. I think Talisman
Mm,
is Bachman.
yeah.
No, that's him and
There
Peter
was
Straub.
Oh, that's
there
right.
was
That's Peter Straub. That's what I'm
this
remembering.
is some deep King lore here, but there was actually one called Rage, which was the first one he
Yeah,
released under Bachman, which had to be like removed from publication
it was
because
basically
it
like
insp
Carrie if it was a boy, right?
yeah,
Isn't
it
it
was
kind of like
like
a Carrie echo?
it's like 150 pages and it's basically this one kid he's planning to like shoot up his college and
Yeah.
it's like just basically his screed as he
Shouts to the
like
dead zone.
I can see why
um
that got removed.
Yeah. Stephen
yeah, it
King's
got
Polytechnique.
so that's actually a really difficult book to find.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Bachman was like an early way of him like basically releasing and writing stuff that I don't know if it was because his publishers originally weren't keen on releasing it, or I don't know what the
I think
original
I
reasons
I
were, but
think I think he did it because he was interested to see if his books would sell without his name on it.
right, that does sound familiar now that I think about
And
it.
and they did. There was one called there, so Desperation was released as Stephen King, and on
Mhm.
the same day The Regulators was released
That's
by
right.
Richard Bachman. I haven't read either of those. I've heard really good things about Desperation. I think that has like a shitty TV movie as
It does. I've read
as
the
is
book
his
and
want.
seen the movie, and it's yeah, the movie is pretty bad. Um, yeah, okay, yeah, that does scan now that I now that you say that. But yeah, I am interested, I guess, to see this. I hope it
I
does well.
I was impressed by the movie's commitment to gruesomeness, especially in the physicality sense. There's one scene where someone's ankle is just completely like this and it's
Yeah.
red and bloody. And I was just like reeling in my seat. I was just like, oh my God, this
See,
is so disgusting.
that was really good. What I think would have gotten the movie way over the top for me is if it was a little less CG in a lot of those
Mhm.
gruesome
Yeah,
segments.
some of it was a little off. I thought the shot where someone's cheek basically gets blown off was pretty impressive. Uh,
It all looks good because it's used very
mhm,
sparingly, but I can like, that is not a practical effect, you know?
mhm. Yeah,
Mhm.
limitations and whatnot. But yeah, I thought David Johnson was really good. I mean, you could not tell the man was British. His full
Yeah.
Southern accent is just incredible work. It's like a reverse.
I said this in the group chat
Mhm.
after I got out of the movie. Like, dude, on Industry, which I've seen the first two seasons of now and a little bit of the
Yeah.
third, he has the
Mhm.
single most Etonian like aspect to his like bro sounds royal at times on that show. So it's just really amusing to see him.
Yeah.
It was fun to see him do it in Alien. I want to keep calling it Alien Isolation. Uh,
Alien
and
Mitt Romney.
yeah.
That's right, Mitt Romney.
Uh, but yeah, again, that's the only good part of that movie.
And then this movie
I'm
also
sorry, I'm
had the
just a little
butt. I'm
sad.
sorry.
Sorry, I'm just a little
No,
sad
sorry.
that we
Keep
did
going.
not get to do Alien Romulus on this show because it would have been the
Yeah.
rare moment of like just really uniformly
Yeah.
Because there's
Wait.
actually a good bit to talk about with that movie and how much they blew it. I
I
just
mean,
think it would have made for a fun episode.
we could do an Alien retrospective. That'd be fun because we all love the original. Some
And
people
then
here are
Zach
very,
gets a
very wrong about
pillow
the second one.
and he just lays down and takes a nap for the next all
And,
of the movies.
and I hit
Mm.
you with my purse on several occasions.
Although I'll wake up to in time to say that Alien Resurrection is my favorite Junet picture.
That
Uh,
I get that
I,
Delicatessen is probably the one, or maybe
yeah,
City of Lost
it is.
Children, but like
God.
It's
they're both
delicatessen.
they're
Yeah.
both mid.
and that's the point where I wake up and I go, "Hey, who the fuck is that?"
That's is that Joss Whedon?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's all for me.
Circling back to my point, this movie, The Long Walk, also has Mark Hamill playing the evil general, and it's not in it for much, but it's very fun to see him just play a nasty old bad guy.
Yeah.
I low key thought he sucked, but uh, again, very sparing, so it didn't really.
He's just like a little bit of spice here and
The
there.
whole subtext to this one, and I don't think that it's going for allegory, but it's like a very Vietnam kind of like putting our boys in the meat grinder kind of story.
Yeah, and the whole aesthetic of it is totally like there's no car in this movie that you see that is past the year 1990. So
Yeah, it was interesting to try to like pin it in my mind when it could take place because you really don't get anything modern at all.
Mhm.
it's clearly like post late 70s, but
Yeah, it looks 80s.
it's also in a time frame that is they do this long walk because there was a fictional war and the United States economy has been completely decimated by it. So the idea is that they do this long walk where they gift the winner of it with a grand prize of one wish and an untold amount of money. So they do that in the all the characters say that it's to inspire hope that, and there's like a plot point about how there is no young man who doesn't enter the long walk. They only they pick like 50 or 30 or however many that it
I think it's
is.
like one per state, right?
So it really
Yeah, that's
is
right.
extremely Hunger Gamesy.
Oh
Like there's
yeah.
like a little lottery system.
Yeah.
You got like the death game where you're
Mhm.
like, well, wait, this just seems like a culling. Are we just culling people? Is
More
there
or
like
less.
an
Yeah.
objective to this? Is this one
Yeah.
televised or no? No television element?
This
No,
one's
well, there's
televised.
there's cameras, but that's not really a focus at all.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
There's no effie trinket or anything.
Right.
Yeah. Unless whatever Judy Greer's doing for the
There's
5 seconds
no
she's in
Philip
this.
Seymour Hoffman designing death game traps.
It's
No.
still so strange to me that he was in those.
That second one's a
Those
banger.
movies have a really
Yeah.
stacked cast.
They
They
do.
do, they do. Yes. I think
Fucking
I did see.
unbelievable amounts of money.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm.
But yeah,
That-
my last note, no one show RuPaul this movie, please, for the love of God. She's gonna get ideas.
Mm. Doing all that in heels. I don't know about it. But yeah, that is all for me this week.
Cole, what you got?
All right, so I want to talk really quickly about Eleanor the Great, the directorial debut of one Miss Scarlett Johansson. And I want to present this scenario in the movie to you guys and see what you think about it. What if Dear Evan Hansen was
Oh
about an
God.
old woman who was lying about being a Holocaust survivor?
Okay.
So if
That,
if
that
that's
that's
the, if
that's
that's the
actually an
single
interesting. It's an
if
interesting
that's
conceit.
if that's the single blackest comedy ever made, then okay.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. It's not.
Mhm.
Hmm.
It's really
Hmm.
not. Uh, so this movie focuses on Eleanor Morgenstein, played by June Squibb,
I don't like
who
how close that
moves
is to my last name. I don't.
she's a convert to Judaism who, converted when she married her husband 50 odd years ago and has been living with her best friend Bessie, who was a Holocaust survivor, uh, for many years after her husband passed away, but Bessie has recently died. So she moves from Florida to Manhattan to live with her daughter, played by Jessica Hest, and her grandson, who is in this movie, but she doesn't give a fuck about him. So he's barely in the movie, which is kind of hilarious. And she ends up at this Jewish community center, and she inadvertently walks into a group for Holocaust survivors. And in that
Oh,
moment,
so
we
it's Fight
introduce
Club.
her. And so she decides to tell Bessie's story as her own. The problem is that a 19-year-old girl named Nina is sitting in on the group, trying to get some inspiration for her journalism class as a way to reconnect with her father, who's a local news host, played by Chiwetel Ejiofor. And she's been struggling because her mother just recently passed away. So she's a kinship in Eleanor, very Harold and Maude-esque.
Yep.
And it's just about the lies spiraling out of control because now Eleanor wants a bat mitzvah because she was never able to get one, for surviving the Holocaust, even though, you're just a convert. Like, what do you do? This movie played at Cannes and is now getting a release by Sony Pictures Classics next week, actually. It is such a wrong-hidden movie. And I think part of it is just because, one, it's the plot of the lie is revealed, but we forgive the person anyways because we like them. It doesn't feel earned here because this is possibly the worst thing you could write. And it just doesn't feel real. It just feels so artificial. And I think, and God is gonna fucking shoot me because I'm about to compliment Dear Evan Hansen. You can get away with that on stage because emotions are heightened on stage. In a film, you can heighten emotions, absolutely. But Johansson's direction is very hushed and restrictive. So it creates a more true to life feeling that I don't think this movie earns, and I don't think that this movie can get away with.
Yeah, you don't want to go Hallmark. You want to go brutally ironic. You want to go like unforgivable type of, depravity with that setup.
Yeah.
I
And
have
the
two
movie is
notes.
just so easy to forgive her. And
I have two notes. One, I saw the original run of Dear Evan Hansen on Broadway, Ben Platt and all. They didn't get away with shit. Two, this is my absolute least favorite kind of movie. The one where it's like a lie or a misunderstanding generates the entire plot and all of the drama that ensues. It is an automatic not watching that ever. Like the hardest skip of all time.
Well, there's only one thing to learn, right? Which is, it's not necessarily wrong, but it's like you simply have to tell the truth because in 90 minutes, that's what you're going to do. We can just skip all of this and go right to that point. There's nothing, whoa, yes, they've been deceived.
Maybe it's just one time I saw a movie like that where the truth is revealed and they bludgeon the liar to death with a large object. Maybe I would enjoy that trope that one time. But otherwise, it's like, oh, all must be forgiven.
Yeah, I don't know. Save this for kids' movies like A Bug's Life or something. I don't know. Don't try to do this with the Holocaust.
Just really like 0 to 100 to like, what is the last thing that I should do this with?
Yeah, it's a misfire.
It's the kind of concept that I can imagine this working as like a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode.
Yes,
you know what I mean? And maybe
brutally ironic, like just scraping you over the concrete for 30 minutes, uncomfortable, like Michael Scott, The Office level of, oh, we're just in a situation like that. That show has honestly always been a tension. The idea of any sincerity here is a mistake. That's where the Harold and Maude thing, like Harold and Maude, irony, 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 smack you across the fucking face with sincerity. That's the movie. You can't, it doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like there's like a tonal balance thing that you have to achieve there. Ruth Gordon.
Yeah. All love to June Squibb. Love her always.
Indeed.
just not a good movie, unfortunately. Another Cannes entry that I'm going to talk about is The History of Sound, directed by Oliver Hermanis. This is a gay love story about between two music college students, one played by Josh O'Connor, the other one played by Paul Mescal. And it's about their brief but passionate romance and the way that it affects one of them years and years and years later, even as they try to move on in life. A lot of people have criticized this movie for having a very hushed and quiet tone. It's very laid back, very relaxed, very still in a sense. It's kind of like still paintings. Um, Thankfully for me, I like that kind of filmmaking, so I did enjoy this. I thought that Mescal and O'Connor were very good in their roles. Mescal's Kentucky accent, I think, needs to be judged by the pod later on. Just I don't know how accurate it
You
is,
know,
but
certainly not in the vocal stylings, but in the spirit, there is a fair amount of commonality between the average Kentuckian and the average Irishman. Uh,
I'm gonna
that
I'm
commonality
gonna
is whiskey primarily, but
yeah.
uh, I'm intrigued. What's up with Paul Mescal and he just his continued insistence on playing gay dudes? What's going on there?
It's a great question.
really
What
pressing
is
question, honestly.
what does Gracie Abrams know?
My question to the chat, and I know I'm gonna get met with resistance on this, so understand that I'm talking about passing the class versus passing the class. You know what I'm saying? Is Paul Mescal good? Does he have it? Is he a
He's
starting
solid.
quarterback of a playoff team? Like, I mean, is he gonna take us to the Super Bowl?
I don't think that he's ever going to be like the lead that
He,
Gladiator 2 tried
yeah.
so hard to make him. Like that clearly
Mhm.
should have been like Austin Butler or something.
I think his
But
After Sun nomination was an inspired choice by the Academy. He certainly would have been a superior win to Brendan Fraser that year had it gone that. It's not surprising that it didn't go that way, but if it had gone that way, it wouldn't be something to be mad about.
Yeah.
that's a great turn.
Yeah,
I haven't I never finished his breakout miniseries Normal People, but he was very good on that.
Andrew High
Um,
movie, he's good, but he's definitely like fourth out of four of those, the parents and Andrew Scott and him.
I think
His character doesn't really help him out too much,
I think a lot of this will ultimately ride on Hamnet.
which sounds like it's great, and I'm hearing great things
mhm.
about the book. I'm very excited for Hamnet.
I'm very excited for Jessie Buckley to win her first Oscar.
She's got it.
She
I'm not
does.
questioning her
That's
talent.
that is not arguable.
Yeah, I
She's
don't.
very
What
talented.
what I
Shame
will
about the
say
movie
for
she usually picks, but
what I will say for Paul Mescal is I've enjoyed him basically, I think, in everything I've seen him in, but his casting in anything is never a point of excitement for me.
Sure.
It's never
yeah.
a point of like, okay, I think he'll bring something interesting to this role. It's more like I think he has a particular sort of limited range of strengths, and it really depends on the right director being able to tap into those. So like, to put the difference between a performance that can like make you feel genuinely sort of emotional coming out of him versus something that feels a little bit like um hokey and sort of a little bit like sappy and
I
pitiful.
think
There's
directors
a
have
there's a
so
really
far, I think they've so far misunderstood what makes After Sun tick is that there's a lot brewing under the surface with that character that you're seeing from the
Mhm.
eyes of a child. So the child sees a father who's doing his best to be sweet and comforting and loving, but then there are these frustrations and doubts and fears all percolating under that surface, and he's really good at that kind of unsteady. So they try to get him in these like Ryan Gosling drive type things where he's like mugging a little bit. And the mugging is not the same thing as having like a quiet disappointment and rage beneath the surface of somebody who's trying to be nice to a little girl. I think
Mm.
what Morgan said about Glad 2 Ader that strikes me as accurate is that he'll never be like a very conventional leading man. But that movie had a path to doing it right where he would just be like a feral animal boy, like just like a beast
Mhm.
person, a la Skarsgård in The Northman. Like if you just have him do that, he's way more effective in that movie because I think he could do that kind of. I think he does do that stuff well in that movie. But
Yeah.
then by the end, he's like trying to do like noble hero stuff, and it's like, shut up.
He's trying to do Russell Crowe, and it's like,
Which was already boring and carried
yeah.
entirely by a specific brand of charisma.
And then having to do that against one of America's greatest movie stars is
Amen.
like suicide.
Amen. That's our
And
analysis on Ridley Scott.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
saw a
no,
clip of Van Lathan on I think one of the drafts that they did
mhm.
on the Ringer channel, and he said Gladiator 2 is fucking unwatchable. And I was like, I don't agree, but I see exactly where you're coming from.
It's a banger.
I
I'm
got it.
sorry.
Did you guys see that clip of Tracy Letts saying that the climax of A New Hope is boring?
I not only did I see that clip, I watched that entire video. And yeah, it's
What?
thumbnail.
He's allowed
Um,
to say whatever he wants.
he's the only person that in that setting that I wouldn't be like, I'm turning the fucking video off right now.
That's preposterous.
Yeah. Sean was like, that's one of the worst takes that we've ever had on this channel.
Wow.
But yeah, History of Sounds, I think pretty solid movie. I think it's playing just in New York and LA right now, and then it's of course doing
It's
the
here.
limited rollout thing. Okay, so
It's here.
it's made its way. Uh, the other thing I'm going to bring up two more things. The first thing I'm going to bring up is the reason why Jordan Peele fired his management team.
Oh,
Him,
God.
Is this the movie? Is this the movie that he did instead of Weapons, basically? Is this the sliding doors?
I think this is basically it. Like he was able
Oh,
to
God.
land the rights for him, but not Weapons.
Oh, brutal.
This is one of the worst movies of the year.
Amazing.
I was
It-
looking forward to this because it
It
looked
is.
like really out there.
We did, I think it
Ooh,
must
I
have been the
wish it was
first one.
out there.
We did that Eddington recording, and I think we brought it up, and Cole was like, "It looks like Black Swan for football," and Morgan's like, "I'm really excited." And I was just like, "This looks like shit," and I was like, "Maybe it will be cool." I don't know.
It's not Black Swan for football. You know what it is? It's an entire season of
Exploitation.
American Horror Story crammed into 90
Oh,
minutes.
yeah, much worse. No, there's like a trend, and I know that Peele produced this, executive produced it, etc. Whatever, I don't remember which level it is.
He produced it, I think.
But there is a burgeoning genre of like get out exploitation, like Opus, Pussy Island, nay, no, sorry, excuse me, it's Blink Twice, nay, Pussy Island is what I want to say there. There's a bunch of these. There's a bunch of them. Person finds himself in a predicament. There was just one. What was the one with the farmstead this year that felt like
No,
that?
the
It was
woman in
like
the yard.
no, it was no. They're like up in
That's in that
Canada or
genre,
something.
though.
Probably, yeah. What's the one where they're up in Canada? You guys, if Davey were here, he would know the fake movie I'm talking about right now. Anyway, sorry.
I mean, no one watches more fake movies than Davy Pepper. So, but him focuses on a newbie to the. Hold on, let me rephrase that. So
40
him.
Acres is the name of it. 40 Acres.
Oh,
Should be a
Okay.
memorable name because of that.
why the hell isn't that movie set up in South Canada? It's crazy. Okay, but him focuses on Cameron Cade, played by Tyreek Withers, who also stars in the new I Know What You Did Last Summer. So he's just on
great.
an all-time run of bullshit.
Yeah, Zoomer's not hot so far on the acting circuit.
But yeah, he's a rising college football star and wannabe quarterback who's invited to the home of Isaiah White, who is like the GOAT. He's the greatest football player of all time. He's got 8 Super Bowl rings. Fuck you, Tom Brady.
Question.
Yeah.
What position is he meant to have played?
Quarterback, obviously.
Marlon Wayans?
Marlon Wayans.
All right. That doesn't make any sense.
55-year-old Marlon Wayans, or however old he is.
I mean, he's like a lanky guy. He looks like a wide receiver. That's all I'm saying. He doesn't look like a quarterback at all. Doesn't have quarterback vibes at all.
Love him. I too visibly old. But the thing is that it's his last.
So is Aaron Rodgers. So
yeah.
Okay, well that guy's just a freak. So
yeah.
But this movie.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna end up seeing this stupid ass thing. The other thing is like the guy has like a head injury, right? It's like his career gets threatened by a head injury.
Yeah. So
he goes to this guy.
He's hit on the head right before Combine.
Yeah.
Like where they basically show off their skills or whatever.
And a
I,
thing that's
I
not
don't
at all racially sort of like antebellum South coded, that whole process.
I don't know fucking nothing about college
It's
football.
named after
Yeah.
a piece of farm equipment.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
the part that
yeah.
you basically go show the guy that wants to draft you in an auction style format how big and strong and fast you are.
These are all things that the movie touches on extremely briefly. Like,
Yeah,
oh, this is
but
kind of
the
the way.
reason why I'm saying this is because there is a really nasty, loaded history that belongs to all things professional sports in America, which is one of
Mhm.
our most profitable and like well publicized, produces mega celebrities industries that we have. There is a place in movies to get really dark and dingy and dirty with all this stuff.
Yeah. The problem is that the movie does not go deep enough on any of this. It doesn't go in on that. It doesn't go in on CTE and how that affects people. It
Insane
just
choice
it just
to not do
barely
that.
touches anything while just adding in these really lame scares every once in a while because he goes there and oh it's weird and it's this creepy house in the middle of Arizona or wait no it's Texas because the team is the San Antonio Saviors and it's like oh football's a cult and they
Yeah.
kind of look like they're worshiping the devil and yada 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 and then
Right.
Julia Fox shows up sans eyebrows and
Ah, right, right.
she,
I forgot
she
she's in it.
plays Marlon Wayne's wife, who's like a
Right.
mega. She's like an influencer, and like her first scene, she hands Cameron a butt plug, and it's like, "Hey, you can use this," and it's like made out of jade or whatever. But this movie just collapses into idiocy almost right away. It's got no sense of pacing. It's got no sense of character. It's got no sense of anything that it's trying to do until it gets to this really big, bloody, stupid halftime show inspired finale.
Should have been a music video.
It looks like a music video.
Yeah, strong music video vibes. Is
But
it the
yeah,
debut for this director? I've never heard of him before.
Justin Tipping, the director, he directed Kicks back in 2016, which I have not seen. And then he also directed the miniseries version of uh, the drama between Joe Exotic and Carol Baskins. Anybody remember those names?
Nope.
Yeah, unfortunately.
2020 was such a long ago. Jesus.
I just want to say that my friends and I were walking out of a movie the other day, and
Hmm.
we looked at the poster for this, and we saw the credit written by Skip Bronke on the side of it, and we laughed for I think 3 hours about that name. And we'll laugh about it again when we see one battle after another this week. Somebody will make a Skip Bronke joke.
God. But yeah,
That's
no,
this movie's legacy.
Yep.
this is one of the worst studio releases of the year. Awful, awful movie. Do not see it. Don't waste your time on it. And then the last thing I'm going to bring up to close out, because we talk about rewatches on here, I went to the Academy Museum and saw a 35 millimeter print of Mildred Pierce.
Mm,
What a
indeed.
great movie. Joan Crawford, Queen. She should have shot that daughter. I swear to God.
The fuck kind of name is Vida?
I don't know. That's when you name a monster.
Yeah, that's
Was
like
it was it
some.
sorry, was it Todd Haynes that did the miniseries with Winslet?
Mhm.
Yes,
Okay, yeah. So that's probably worth checking out.
I would assume so. I haven't seen it, admittedly, but the original film is an absolute classic. It's a melodrama. It's noir. It's Joan Crawford.
The Michael
Her,
Curtis.
It was his follow-up to Casablanca,
Mhm.
and it's Joan Crawford in furs and furs and furs,
It's
and
Pete Joan Crawford. I don't think she's got a better one in her. I mean,
no,
she has many great performances, but
this
I
is
think
the
that's her crown
apex.
jewel.
Yeah, no, it's the apex for sure. I mean, it's the
Where
one she
it's
won the
that,
Oscar for.
she's dignified and powerful, but crumbling and a victim. You know what I mean? Like it's all of her dynamics all at once. Her
And
steeliness, her
mhm,
pride.
her desire to make a better life for her kids, but she keeps on fucking up at every single chance
Mhm.
because Sometimes you raise a monster, and that's what it is.
I think there's like some smart stuff in there about how like success isn't always success,
Yeah.
like you achieved the dream for what?
Mhm. Yeah. What
So
was
that
the
you could
point?
die in a beautiful fur. Good for you.
Yeah. It's not a big old dusty house in Glendale.
Yeah. Great movie.
Masterpiece. I'll be back
Absolutely.
there very soon for both Viridiana and All About Eve. So,
Oh, Louis. All About Eve is peak Betty Davis,
yep.
her
Yeah, they're doing a
nemesis.
series this fall of showcasing Best Actress nominees slash winners.
Okay. Gotcha. I have almost nothing, still kind of in the same spot I was in last week when we recorded. Mostly been reading. I've actually pivoted off of what I was working on because I'm trying to read Vineland before next week, the Pynchon novel that One Battle After Another is based on. Thus far, it's very Inherent Vice-like. You got a kind of a bumbling idiot who's, well, really, Doc is not that much of an idiot. Zoid Wheeler in Vineland is a stupid ass, and he's got like the estranged, it's a wife, girl, the daughter, and there's kind of a character similar to Bigfoot in Inherent Vice that's like a Fed that's giving him shit, and he's kind of this washed up hippie, and it's all about like the Reagan years and these different things that a lot of different Pynchon stuff touches on. I'm still waiting for it to click. I've never really clicked with a Pynchon novel. I don't know how much any of you guys have ever really been exposed. I tried to read Gravity's Rainbow, and in the wise words of Benoit Blanc, I try to comfort myself that no one else has finished it either. Um, that was like high school. I did eventually read Inherent Vice because of the movie, and now I'm doing Vineland. You can see V's up here on my shelf. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try. No promises. Pynchon kind of belongs to the first wave of postmodern authors, which includes like Vonnegut, the author of Slaughterhouse-Five, Joseph Heller, the author of Catch-22. You've got I'm trying to think. John Barth would be another one. I'm
Mm.
like, and there's like some great stuff in there. I particularly love Vonnegut. I'm much more of like in that second wave of guys with like Don DeLillo and just like later, funnier, zanier type of stuff. There's a certain thing with Pynchon that just never really, his sense of humor never quite connects with me. So I'm trucking through that. I do want to mention one movie that I did go out and see, which was a 35 millimeter screening of a DV directed by one Lars von Trier. Not a Dogma film, although having some of the hallmarks of Dogma, and that is Dancer in the Dark, starring Bjork.
Mm-hmm.
So the interesting story. By now, the distribution rights of that movie are officially in the wind. No one can see it. It can't be screened. It can't be distributed. There is a Blu-ray of it out there that you can go get. So we saw one of the very last possible screenings of that 35 millimeter print of the DV.
Wow.
Amazing movie, fucking devastating ending. One of, I would say one of Von Trier's best, but I'm honestly really into Von Trier, so I don't even know if it gets much higher than like top five for me, because I still would put like Dogville and a couple others above it. But like a really, really special use of those tools of the lead casting, the use of musicals, the way that it kind of like innately clashes with those dogma ideas of like non-diegetic sound and all these different things. Also, it kind of made me feel motion sick to see it on a movie theater screen. I don't know if it was the movie or just something with me, but I felt like those guys that saw like Blair Witch Project back in the day. I was like, or something. Again, I don't. It may have just been like I was eating some candy. Like it might have just been me, but it was like, oh, what the fuck? I don't know. I'm not really sure. I've heard people say it about like Linklater's tape before, like the frantic way that the cinematographer is like jiggling around the camcorder in that. But
Mm.
that was kind of interesting. I've seen the movie before. I've never had that. I own it on DVD and have watched it on DVD and never had that problem. But something maybe about like the flicker of the projector mixed with the format, mixed with the size. I was like, "Ugh, where am I?" I had a
The
similar
last,
kind of thing with Inland Empire when I saw that.
You would have died during Miami Vice last year.
I wouldn't have gone.
yeah. The last time I had something like that was a couple years ago. They did Dawn of the Dead in theaters, the original.
Oh
but
yeah,
it was in 3D.
right.
Uh,
Hmm.
so it was like probably the only time you're gonna get to see Dawn of the Dead in theaters.
Again, another
It's
distribution fucking
it's
nightmare.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's in
that's all
3D.
clusterfuck.
Is ultimate monkey's paw moment. So I sat there and I got through it and generally had a good time, but also my eyes and head hurt. And why did you do this?
Yeah, terrible. That's like it. So we're coming up on October, and the Texas Theater does a lot of like horror things, and they like to do silence with live scores. For example, we're getting Murnau's Faust on October 5th with like a live drone metal score. I've actually like listened to the score in advance of going to see this. I'm really, really excited for it. And then every year they do a Nosferatu thing with a local-ish, I think they're from Austin, band called the it's either I think it's the Invincible Czars. I always read it and think it's invisible, but it's invincible.
Hmm.
Um, but Morgan, your thing is reminding me of this recent series they did where they took silent films and it wasn't live scores, but they rescored them. So there was like a Radiohead, Nosferatu, and there was like an REM, Sherlock Jr., which sounded really stupid. But here's the thing, like, so what I've understood about the Radiohead Nosferatu is that it was actually kind of like a cool synergy, except that they put all these fucking digital intertitles in it. Like they removed the original intertitles and put new ones in there. And there are like
Oh.
effects and shit. Like they did like a specialized edition of
Mm-mm.
Murnau's Nosferatu.
That sounds
Never,
like the shit
never,
they're doing at the Sphere with the Wizard of Oz. Fuck that.
Yeah. I
never
think
let these people cook again.
the one acceptable version of that is maybe like the Giorgio Moroder Metropolis, where it's like an
Mm-mm.
alternate cut that's got like the colored stuff, just because his score is so cool. But even then, it's like I would never choose to watch Metropolis this way. This would never be like I would never count that as like an official version of that movie by any
Yeah.
means, just because it's so abbreviated. So I've already tilted us into the direction to go ahead and pivot into the real deal. Although if I think maybe Morgan and Cole, you guys have mostly stuck to the assigned stuff. I did one other PTA. I think Ryley, you weren't on with us last week to talk about Boogie Nights and Magnolia. Have you got anything? Paul, Tommy,
Um,
Polly, Tommy, Andy wise?
well, so we're currently like I'm seeing one battle after another in what's today? So 3 days time, I think. So we're doing like a PTA every night basically until we get to that point. So there's a few that I'm like queued up to watch. Probably going to watch There Will Be Blood not long after we finish recording, to
Mhm.
be
I
honest.
was I was thinking
Uh,
about doing that tonight too.
Oh yeah.
Excited to. We're going to go that and then go into Phantom Thread to do the DDL double
Mhm.
feature, and then hopefully Licorice
Really
Pizza
just
after
it
that.
really just doesn't get better than that. It's just like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
yeah.
But last night I did watch Punch Drunk Love again,
Hmm.
which has always been one of my absolute favorite films of his, and to me kind of really stands out as um there's just it's so idiosyncratic in its sensibility and like how much it tunnels in on the perspective and personality and view of the world that Adam Sandler's Barry Egan has. Like I can understand why this movie leaves some people cold. And like, well, the thing with PTA is like, I was saying this to my partner just earlier. I think he might be just like my favorite guy, full stop. I think I might put him above everyone else. I just there's something about the way the perfect match of his like incredible formalism, the way that he not just the way that he lights his movies as well, but the way that he colors them too, and just the everything about the way the movies look, but also the characters that he's drawn to and the ways of telling the movie through that where you view the movie through their perspective, and they don't necessarily always have like a particularly clear or astute or like coherent view of the world, but the movie that you are watching is so very clearly like their experience of the things around them translated into this form. And Inherent Vice to me is like a perfect example of that, because and Punch Drunk Love is as well. Like you are
Hmm.
experiencing like you're following like a few days in the lives of these characters, but their experience and what you kind of see and how you sort of experience it is all very kind of channeled through like their particular interpretation of things, their particular view and of things as well. There's a lot of stuff that you miss. This is probably more true of Inherent Vice than Punch Drunk Love, but
I
like
think Punch
it's
Drunk
hard to.
always feels defined to me by we did not agree. I don't know that we found the final answer on how to pronounce John Bryan. Is it Brian? Is it Brian? I
I've
still don't
always just
know.
You
said
know,
John Bryan. Yeah.
We're gonna go with John
you know,
Bryan.
so John Mulaney in the beginning of one of his specials that John Bryan scored said John Bryan, everybody. So I'm running with that.
So
Oh, and then
that
Bonnie B.
score, he is an amazing composer, and so like the two that you just name dropped, There Will Be Blood,
Mm,
Phantom Thread, pretty notably scored by Radiohead's guitarist Johnny Greenwood.
mhm.
John Bryan was not like some kind of slouch downgrade
No, shit,
before
no.
Greenwood shows up. And particularly like Magnolia is
I
spectacular.
have Brian's Magnolia score, not the soundtrack by any man,
Right,
but the score for
right.
Magnolia on CD somewhere,
It's
buried somewhere.
amazing.
That's an
But then
incredible score.
the to me like Punch Drunk is like the Michel Legrand, Umbrellas of Cherbourg. We are letting the composer drive this about as
Mm.
much as any other part of the movie is. It's so
Yes,
noisy and
Mhm.
cacophonous and
yes,
buzzing
yes,
the entire time. Just
yes.
those colorful intro title cards that are just like abstract. You just
Mm.
it feels like a demi musical, but like about a guy with the like generalized anxiety disorder, or people think it's kind of like an autism coded thing. I don't try to lean into that too much in terms of like my personal thing, just because like I don't know, that's not like a lens that I would see the film through. But I can see how like the auditory overstimulation stuff would certainly lead you down that path of interpretation.
Mm. Yeah, it's just like I guess what I was trying to say
A movie
is
that
like
was
Punch Drunk
fucking
Love.
reviled when it was released, by the way. Like
Mm,
people rejected this violently. They
mm.
hated it. I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
that that was necessarily the critical reception, but like it was pretty bombed. I mean, and it led to a long hiatus before There Will Be Blood happens.
Mm.
Yeah.
Not huge, but lengthy.
I mean, five
Yeah.
years is a pretty lengthy
Yeah.
bit of time.
When you're talking about like somebody that's that young and coked up and productive,
He had been moving at a pace at that point.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, the thing I was trying to say about Punch Drunk Love is just like it's a movie where all of the formal elements, all of the kind of technical elements, and then the sort of like peripheral elements like the score are like so like laser focused on like helping you to experience the inner world of this protagonist and kind of feel the sense of like anxiety and like overwhelming sort of weight of all of these things that's kind of he's got kind of pressing against him at any given moment in time. Like the best sequence in the whole movie for me is this kind of like sequence right in the middle where the score is at its most esoteric and borderline like noisy, and he's just kind of being assaulted by like one of his sisters is coming after him, and Emily Watson is kind of like staring at him and following him around, and there's this like cacophony happening in this storeroom where he works, where this like this forklift just kind of speeds into the wall
Yes,
behind him,
yeah. I know what you're talking about.
and it's just this
Amazing.
great moment of just like absolute chaos, and this and the phone sex operator lady's calling him, and everything is all happening at once. And while all of this is sort of happening, you just have like what sounds like John Bryan or whatever is just sort of like hitting a piano wires with hammers or whatever he's doing to make those noises. It's just I love that stuff because it all like is all it is all in surface of heightening this very kind of unique and interior like the interior experience of this very unique and kind of like memorable character. And I love how effective that is. I feel
Mhm.
so kind of like sucked into Barry's world and his Barry's experience of it all. But more to say that like Inherent Vice is a movie where like it has a very elegantly structured plot. Like there's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of stuff that's kind of happening in this story. There's like a lot of different characters and pieces that are in motion, and you're viewing this sort of like really complex object, and you're kind of viewing one part of it at a time, while these other aspects are happening in the background that connect back to it. Um, but uh but it is very like elegantly structured. Like you can tell there's a coherency to the whole story when you kind of get to the end of it and reflect back on it. But in the moment, it's really difficult to describe because it's like it's really hard to follow
Mhm.
in a way that feels so true to Doc's like transitory sort of like perpetually high experience of every individual moment where he's sort of like learning something, internalizing it, and like I don't know, there's no sense of the broader context. It's just sort of like one little piece of information at a time, and
You
then
know what
like
he
after
knows.
at a certain point in time, like there's so many different pieces of information that you've absorbed and it's so difficult to piece them all together that the movie kind of like it puts you in this sort of suspended state of like you have to sort of submit to it and stop trying to follow it after a certain
I would
point and
say
just sort of
that
experience
is
it as Doc
like
is experiencing it.
that's how you have to adapt Pynchon if you want to accomplish anything like what reading one of his books is like. It's a wall of information, you know. So like in White Noise by Don DeLillo, there's also a wall of information, but you can quickly start to wrap your head around the idea that like, okay, this is kind of a funny, absurdist, exaggerated version of a family, and they're living in this place, and it's like America, but it's almost like an episode of The Simpsons or something. It's just like really exaggerated. And then the pivot that it takes into darkness, there's such a like human core to that story with Pynchon, especially with a detective story by Pynchon. You're following a plot, but you are drowning in information to the point that yeah, it is just like you just like okay, wherever it is that you're taking me is more important than what I'm supposed to understand about it. I think it's an interesting note just to briefly talk about the one other PTA that I've watched for this whole thing besides the four that we're talking about. To me, so like you've got There Will Be Blood, obviously huge kind of arrival on the grand stage, sophistication type of moment. Then we got Master, which we're going to talk about today, Inherent Vice, which we're going to talk about today. You got Phantom Thread, which three in a row right there, screenplays that are just like, oh, he's not the best director that we've got running. He's like the best writer director that we've got running, where there is just such an ambition and almost like a recklessness. Like early on, there's a recklessness that actually kind of connects maybe to like Pynchon's V, super maximalist, super earnest, super throw everything at the wall style of Boogie Nights and Magnolia. Then we hit like the sophistication point of Blood, and then he decides to do like a fucking 360 jackknife off the diving board into the screenplay of The Master, Inherent Vice, Phantom Thread, because it's just increasingly complicated, difficult, and not just difficult to follow, but difficult emotionally, like confrontational emotionally. And then we land on his only 2020s movie so far before One Battle After Another, which I think is like not like that at all with Licorice Pizza, a movie that I saw on 70 when it first came out, enjoyed, and then it kind of sank in my mind because I just didn't really dig the last like half hour, maybe even full hour of it. It's two and change. And just like the whole second half of it, maybe just kind of sat with me. And then I was like, do I really like this? And so I recently rewatched it because, of course, this is a movie that, like, how should I put this? 2020 Dead Zone, 21 theaters are back. This is like a big thing. A lot of rep screenings, put out a lot of PTA stuff. People got really excited for it. It's out on film. He's like really hitting the 35 millimeter, 70 millimeter trail, like getting it out in front of people on that format. And I feel like people got really excited about Licorice Pizza because it was like one of the first real like cinema moments after like a dead space where we had very few of them. Not to say that's the only thing that people like about it. I just think that it was primed to get this like, a movie shot on film by an auteur, you know, and this groundswell of stuff that kind of went around it because I struggle to reconcile it with how intricate and brilliant I find really the four movies that precede it to be on a written level. And then we kind of just get into like, here's a couple teenagers, they're doing some riffs. There's a bunch of like kind of side characters played by comedic actors doing some riffs. And then it ends and it's like, oh, okay. I don't know what that was about, but all right. Which is fine. I mean, I don't know. Do you guys have any? I don't know when the last time either of you saw this would have been. Probably when it came out.
Yeah, I haven't seen this since 2021. I saw this on 70 at the Fox Westwood Theater, RIP. It got bought out by a bunch of filmmakers, so hopefully it'll come back as a venue. But it's one of the most iconic theaters in the city. But no, I like this movie. I think it's pretty fun. It's pretty chill. I think every once in a while, you, as a director, you just want to make like a movie about childhood and you just spin off something, maybe a little light, but even light PTA
I
is still pretty entertaining. Like,
I
if you
also
don't
haven't
feel the
seen
joy
this.
of Bradley Cooper emerging up over that
Yeah,
hill,
that's a
like,
great moment. I think where it gets me is it's the combination of a thing that I've complained about with Wes Anderson before, where there's a lot of characters in this movie and there are no characters in this movie. Like there's a long cast list, but look, John C. Riley's here. I love Harriet Sansom Harris when she shows up for 37
She's so
seconds
good.
and she just gets unleashed. And then every time we default back to Cooper Hoffman in what I assume is his debut role, but even if
It
it's not his
is. Yeah.
debut, it's
That
so
was.
it's so debut feeling. And then Alana Haim, who again, I don't if it's not a debut, it's so debut feeling. And I hate to be the bearer of like I just don't think either of them is good. Like again, like I was saying earlier about Mescal, I'm not talking about like, are they passing with a fucking D average? There's no sparkle here. Every time that someone else shows up, these two get outshined, and then that person leaves to go not be part of the movie anymore. And it's like, no, Skylar Gisondo, please come back. This was so much more entertaining with you here than it is with you not here. It's like it's kind of a movie of watching people I would rather be the main character of the movie.
I think like, I've only seen this once. I saw it on release. I and it seems likely to me that my fondness for this movie may like not I don't think dull necessarily, but it may go down a little bit on revisit. I mean this is one of those movies where in a way that's not actually entirely dissimilar to Inherent Vice, for instance, or like Boogie Nights, where I'm so like taken with the atmosphere of the setting and just
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
way that it all feels so alive and so kind of exciting and interesting and just fun to be in this space. Like I was really sort of like okay, so Anderson's like I can't claim to like know what it is like to be in California, right? Like it's just never a place that I've never been, but it's also by the same stroke a place where I feel like I have a lot of understanding, or at least I have an understanding or a kind of a knowledge of it that's built from film essentially, and it's this sort of mystical place where that so many of these movies he's made are set where like there's this carefree energy of like people just kind of like moving through different sort of stages of their life and having these kind of
In
you
this
know
one particularly, it gets into not only the showbiz angle, but how show business isn't necessarily made up of like the big luminous Betty Davis, Joan
mm,
type of like stars. It's really more made up of like grinders who are like, you got to start your own business. You got to have an agent. You got to be doing these talent things. When the lady asks what you
Mhm.
can do, just say yes over and over. Like it's kind of like the slimy business, but it
mm.
still kind of has that nostalgia and all this stuff to it.
Yeah, so for me there's kind of almost this fantastical quality to the setting in movies like this, I find it really kind of charming and really sort of I don't know, uh, eh, wonderful in a strange way. And I'll agree that it's not really a movie that has particularly strong characters. It has like strong
You
moments
see
where
what
like
Cole's drinking right there? You see that can of LaCroix? That's what licorice pizza's like. That drink right there. It's like
yeah.
I once heard a joke about LaCroix where it's like you take a drink, somebody from the other room shouts raspberry, and that's the flavor. That's licorice pizza to me. It's like an
Mm.
impression of a thing, It's so, and I think movies can work on that kind of. Although I guess for me, it really depends on the mood. Like this is like a very kind of there's a romance at the center, so it's kind of like a lovey-dovey, warm, nostalgic, bubbly vibe. And if you're gonna go this way, I like a little despondence. I like a little despair. If you're gonna give me like the steeped tea version of a movie, that's like a vibe, but I don't know. There's different ways to do it.
For
I
me, it
do.
felt sort of like it felt sort of like Anderson's take on a kind of like 80s teen sort of romantic sort of high school comedy, and
It's like
to
boogie
see
Yeah.
nights
that
that you make after you get off the uppers and you're like kind of like an old guy and like
Mhm.
calmer.
Yeah.
yeah
You're much more
yeah
chill. You're married to Maya Rudolph, so life is always good.
Right.
mm, mm. No, I just find it charming. I found it charming, and I found it like a, a captivating like in terms of like applying Anderson's style and visual flair and formalism and his sense of place and time to this sort of format of story, this sort of like I guess genre trope was charming to me, I suppose. That's really all
Mhm.
there is to it.
I do find someone describing the valley as mystical to be absolute. It's because every time I'm there, I'm just like, why is it so fucking hot? Get me on the other
Mm,
side of the mountains now.
mm,
I enjoyed Licorice Pizza when it came out a fair bit. I have not really thought about it since. To me, it doesn't really bear thinking about. Like, there's nothing in the aftertaste of that movie. But, it's immaculately crafted, fun performances. I think I said the other day that that movie threatens to be one of his best if it's like a serious actor in the lead, in
Hmm.
either of the leads for that matter, but it doesn't really. Um, but
I think you can rock it with Cooper Hoffman because he does have a sense of like freshness and like newness and innocence that works. You need an upgrade to the Alana Haim part to make him work and to make the movie work to a higher level. I got nothing. She gives me nothing. Sorry. I like her better than Rachel Sennott, who gives me less than nothing.
oh God, yes, yes, absolutely.
New York Film School ass actor. Sorry.
I'm trying to think who would be a good replacement for Alana Haim.
That's like the right age is kind of the tricky part of this, right?
Yeah.
You can't
Hmm.
necessarily just go reach up and
Margaret
grab somebody
Qualley.
like, no, I don't think so.
No,
I
Uh,
mean,
I
it
disagree.
would give you the kind of like, yeah, he has a crush on her and he thinks that, but it wouldn't give you the sense of like she's kind of just like a regular gal who's trying to figure her way out. Because that character is kind of Frances Ha-ish, where it's like woman
mhm.
in early 20s, she's an adult, but she's not grown up kind of thing. That I think like Margaret Qualley, I don't really see it. She's too supermodel-y.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do think that Licorice Pizza benefited also from 2021 being kind
I'm
of a
telling
dry
you.
spell.
It like it's a great movie year, but I'm telling you, it had so much to do with the context of how people saw that movie and what it
Mhm.
meant to have that. Like, that would have been like right around after Dune came out. It's like, whoa, we had a big blockbuster. Oh, here we go with the big auteur celluloid movie. It's getting nominated for Best Original Screenplay.
And then Spider-Man just sucked all the air out of the room.
I do think it's probably like on a short list of the most overrated 2020s movies for me. I'd put it up there with like Worst Person in the World, Top Gun Maverick, which I'm always bullying, Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's like that's kind of like the canon of movies where I'm like,
I,
her?
I, I,
I'll
I
say this,
despise
like,
I despise the term overrated. So
I get you. I understand. I guess let me use a different way of expressing it. They're movies where they clearly took people that saw them to a place emotionally or whatever. They had that reaction like Ryley was talking about seeing the Bygone movie. Like, wow, this just wow. And I walked out like that was a movie. Like, that disconnect
yeah,
between someone
Mhm.
else's excitement and the way that I experienced it being like, okay. And it's really not a fun place to be. It's really not where you want to end up at the end of the screening.
I'll definitely, I'll say this. It definitely feels like this was memory hold quite quickly.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
don't really like think about this movie much anymore. It's not one of the things that comes to mind necessarily when you think
When
of the
my buddy and
time.
I were walking out of Magnolia, which we saw in 35 millimeter, he was like talking about how Magnolia is kind of like lower on the PTA chart for him. And I'm like, the idea of putting Magnolia under Licorice Pizza makes me feel completely fucking insane. It's just like
Yeah,
it's Hard Eight and Licorice Pizza are at the end. They're at the end. They just don't, it's just not, they're not, I'm not saying that you can't, I don't know. I,
yeah.
you would
There's
have to
nothing I
be
would put
convincing
below
me
either
that
of them.
you would have to be convincing me that some of these others don't work as well as I think that they work to
Mm.
to really slate it
even
back there because man, there
even
ain't shit going on.
I
even
will say,
like
like,
Punch
I was
Drunk Love,
surprised.
which is a movie that
So
I
much
feel
more going on.
similarly about coming away from emotionally, has occupied so much more of my mind space.
I mean, Adam Sandler in that movie is better than anything is in Licorice Pizza by a
Undoubtedly.
mile,
For
like just
sure.
more significant, carrying the experience, something you could think about more, something that's more interesting in the scope of his career, where you're like, wow, okay,
Uh,
he's doing this kind of drama thing, but it's
right.
still really kind of
Trying to be
awkward
taken
and
seriously.
challenging, but like not, like it's still his kind of screeching, there's just there's stuff, there's meat on the
Yeah.
bones. There's no meat on the bones with this. No meat.
Let's just all agree that Heart Eight's the worst, right? And if anyone has anything to say otherwise, like, no.
I haven't seen it in long
What did
enough that
what did
I
Davey have under Heart 8 again?
I don't
It was
want
an, it was a
Vice.
remember.
yeah, but
That's
there was another
fucking
I
one.
mean,
ridiculous.
the thing with Hard Eight is just so transparently a warm up for what's about to come, like immediately after it.
Yeah, it's a
Like
good
down to the
debut.
cast and everything. Like
You
everything that movie does
Yeah.
is stuff that Boogie Nights to a large extent and Magnolia to a lesser extent are just going to do better with a
Mhm.
stronger
I would
screenplay.
I
say
watched in the lead up to Paul season.
It's the fame to, the fame monster.
Okay. In the lead up to Paul season that we are now in, I watched Robert Altman's California Split, and then
indeed.
I thought about that. Excuse me. Next to Hard Eight, and I was like, oh, okay. That the gaps are filled in a little more now.
Yeah. California Split, great movie.
Oh
Part
yeah,
8, decent movie. I would not be able to confidently make the case that like Licorice Pizza is a much more formally interesting and accomplished movie than Part 8. From the pure perspective of its images, clearly Licorice Pizza is the pick. You want to talk about the cast? You want to talk about the characters? I could go either way. Cause
yeah,
cause cause Gwenny Paltrow, Philip Baker Hall, John C. Riley, like they're doing that's like one of the best Paltrows that we got acting wise,
yeah.
like acting wise.
I mean, like Hard Eight stuff is comparatively when you're looking at a filmography that's so strong, but it really
Yeah.
needs to be emphasized just how fully formed
Oh,
he
for a
was
debut,
when
that's
he
good
made
stuff.
that.
Yeah.
If
You
that's
need
your
his
to look
whole-
Boxcar
at that.
Bertha, like that's your
He has
Boxcar Bertha, that's pretty solid.
Yeah.
he has like his whole like visual style worked out. He has the style of writing worked out. He
The
has
kind of
like
like
his
overall tone of
guys with the
characters.
cast.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
just that they're kind of I remember the first because I only saw that for the first time a few years back, probably in the lead up to Pizza, maybe or just before that. But it's like you're focused on such not I wouldn't even say like blue collar, but just like such marginal characters within the scope of this world, right? You're not looking at like business owners or movers and shakers. It's just like some dudes. And they really are some fucking dudes. And we never lose that. Even when you're moving into something more ambitious like Boogie Nights, you're clearly looking at kind of maybe not amateur filmmakers, I wouldn't say, but lower rents. You're not at like the pinnacle of the pinnacle of the pinnacle. You're always kind of looking at something more mundane than that, which I think is useful. Not, I don't know why I said useful. I don't really know what I'm trying to get at there, but that informs that early work, I think. A certain humility, a certain, I mean, Cole might say like the type of people that live in the valley, type of people that live their whole lives in the valley, right? Not talking about Hollywood, talking about north of Hollywood.
Mhm. Yeah, no. He ranked Licorice Pizza and Inherent Vice lower than Part 8.
I can live with Licorice Pizza under it. I can. I think that's reasonable. I do. Inherent Vice under it is fucking crazy.
Sure can.
Let's break into Inherent Vice. I've read this novel. Anybody else read the novel Inherent Vice?
Nope.
It's
Nope.
it's probably the most direct of the PTA adaptations. Just to go into it, I think they're mostly up there, except for Inherent Vice. He's done Oil by Upton Sinclair. That became There Will Be Blood. Significant changes. Although it's an adaptation, it is a direct adaptation. The Master, which we'll talk about next after Inherent Vice, because I think we just have a little bit more to say about it, is based on V, but like unofficially and also not, like it's inspired by might be the right way to put it. Inherent Vice, fairly beat for beat, and then one battle after another. I've heard mixed things, but we'll see. I kind of doubt that it's like Vineland. I kind of imagine that it's more like he took the things that he loved from it and spun those into the movie. Inherent Vice, on the other, I mean, it really is like beat for beat, character for character, quite similar. And that means that it's probably the most out there, confusing, not quite surreal PTA, but like in that vein, moving towards that energy of like I don't think that there's another PTA movie other than the one that we're going to talk about next, The Master, which again has Pynchon roots. I don't think that there's another one that's as difficult to like wrap your hands around other than these two. Really the pair. I guess I'm introducing the pair here this way. Because I think like even with Magnolia, as many characters as there are, as many plot lines as there are, it's easy to follow it in the moment and it's easy to map it out after. But like Ryley was saying, this, I guess what I would say is every time I rewatch Inherent Vice, I'm a little surprised that it starts out as comprehensible as it does. I'm like, okay, the girl's here. She's getting into some trouble with Mickey Wolfman. He's a real estate guy. There's some nasty characters and neo-Nazis involved. There's we don't know this at the very beginning, but there's a gang that's going to get involved called the Golden Fang.
Golden
And so
Fang.
you're like you're in all this stuff and you're going, and then you have this other set of characters that gets brought into it, Owen Wilson, Coy, and their whole heroin addicted family thing that's happening. And just the longer it goes on, because you are focused on the inch in front of your face and you're not focused over here, you are led along a path that's like linear. You're like, yep, okay, this is all making sense. This is all making sense. And you kind of look and you're like, wait, where the fuck are we? You know, you're so confident that you know where you're going, but you're just in that haze. This is the clearest ancestor in the PTA filmography to The Long Goodbye, pretty clearly. And I think
For
the
sure.
lineage would also include The Big Lebowski by the Coen brothers, another that's like Raymond Chandler infected.
This will come up later.
Yeah, it's like a
Yes.
stoner comedy detective noir thing. But within that canon, what I always find really interesting revisiting this again, and this is the other shared link between the two movies, is that Joaquin Phoenix does not play this guy like a cartoon character. He plays him like a pretty earnest guy. There's like he's clearly intelligent. There's like life in there. He's a thinker, much more than like the dude is a thinker, right? This guy actually is a private eye, and you're feeling like, oh, he's probably not a bad private eye. He's just stoned all the time. And that to me is always kind of an interesting thing because I sort of remember this movie and him being like a goofball, and he's not really a goofball. Like those characteristics are there. He's funny, but he's not inept in the way that like let's think about Under the Silver Lake. That character, Andrew Garfield's character, is just like overmatched completely. 100%. Doc isn't, or he is. He's not. I don't know. Anyway. Inherent Vice.
He has a really like effective way of like almost like interacting flirtatiously with just about everyone that he meets, like men and women alike. Like he has a way of like sort of charming them.
You're gonna give me a hard on.
Well, the rapport he has with Bigfoot in particular, I think, is a really interesting character dynamic because they're so push and pull with each other.
I think I have this rated at 4 stars, and if Josh Brolin were in like 30 more minutes of it, I would rate it at 5 stars. Every second he's on screen, I'm like, holy fuck.
After I got out of Weapons, I think I was the first of us to see it. I was like, this is best Brolin. And then Zach was like, it's No Country for Old Men. And I was like, you're right. And then we were both wrong because it's this.
He's just fucking on one. So his introduction in this movie.
Hi. Dozo.
Moto Pedakeku. Moto Pedakeku.
Moto Pedakeku.
His introduction in this movie on the television screen is probably the most surreal and Pynchon moment where Doc has already referred to Bigfoot. You have like an idea of who he is. He's thought about it because he's the girl Shasta Faye comes to him and he's like, have you thought about going to Bigfoot with us? So you know that there's this like cop guy. And then you're watching a commercial, which is for a development by Mickey Wolfman, who we've just learned who that is. And then Brolin shows up in like a big fucking afro wig. He's like, what's up,
Unrecognizable at first. Unrecognizable until the camera just kind of like zooms in more and more. And you're like, oh, wait, that is Josh Brolin.
That whole thing is the most Pynchon thing in the entire thing, where it's like, come move to our development so that you can see the scenic reservoir dam, and like the TV starts talking to him and shit. It's just like, oh, I've been grounded. I know where this movie is gonna go now. Fucking incredible
the food here is great, but really what I come here for is the respect.
The respect. Which is echoed later when you see how like pussy whipped he is by the wife, like who just is because the whole thing he's just beating the shit out of Doc, like he's just this tough guy, and then you see how it breaks and
him coming down on him with both knees in slow motion in that scene was like, oh my god, it's like Robin does this to a bad guy in Teen Titans, like bro, calm down.
And it's so funny because he'll just do that shit for no reason. It's like just a complete like big brother, little brother type of dynamic.
It's like every time they see each other, Brolin's like that. Fuck, I'm coming
It,
after you.
it's fucking on site.
The scene with them in the police station where he's like the lawyer played by Benicio del Toro comes in and he's like, "You don't really have a case. You need to let him go." And he's like, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna kick. You think you're gonna kick him? Well, that's assault."
I think Sancho Smilax Esquire is my favorite name in fiction.
Well, here we go, right? Because the names, and I guess this is a Pynchon thing, the
Mhm.
names in this are
The-
absolutely
Insane.
incredible.
I know
Huck
he changed it.
Beaverton, Adrian Prussia, FBI agents Flatweed and Borderline.
Nicky Wolfman, Shasta Faye Hepworth,
I know he changed it for One Battle After
Bigfoot
Another.
Bjornsson.
It's like Bob something, but the
Yeah,
character's name in Vineland is Zoid
Zoid
Wheeler,
Wheeler.
which is a close runner-up for my favorite name in fiction.
All of the names in Vineland are like they're named after like celebrities and movie characters and a bunch of other dumb bullshit like that.
And of course, don't forget Sortilege, who is also the narrator. Like that's in her.
That's the credit.
That's the credit.
Joanna Newsom. It is an extremely 2014 thing to do to cast Joanna Newsom in your motion picture, to have her be like the noir narrator. And so it's like this kind of wistful, hippie, dreamy. She's not even really informing you about anything half the time. She's like slipping you
Yeah.
all this fucking doper dialect. So, he had a bad case of doper's memory. And like it just completely sets the tone, I think, mixed with kind of sunset, sun-kissed coastal imagery and stuff like that. You're just really there. Also, just in terms of things that kick off the tone, um, controversial take. I think this might be my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson soundtrack. The vitamin C needle drop that kicks you into the
That,
title card is like so fucking supreme. Like it just
I
and
was
it's a
completely
like,
blows my
perfect
mind.
it's a perfect place setter as well, because not only is
Mhm.
just an amazing song to drop at that point in time, like you immediately understand, like obviously the movie tells you right away that it's set in the early 70s, but like you immediately get the vibe and feeling of that as soon as the can needle drop sets in. You're just like post 60s. That hangover is still like being sort of cast over America, and
Yeah.
the influence of like European art and music into American culture is really kind of like digging its claws in. And so the
Mhm.
can needle drop is just so perfect for that. The soundtrack's amazing.
I
It's
only
a,
got
it's
to watch about half of
Beautiful
this movie
soundtrack.
before we started, and I was mulling over that take while I was watching it some, and then it drops Neil Young's Harvest, and I was like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. I just
you know, could be
insane
something there.
pulls. Just like
Could
the
be something
tune that's
there.
rocking up when he goes to the massage parlor where he meets Hong Chow and then Homeboy winds up dead. The music in this shit just goes really, really hard. I love it.
Yeah.
Joaquin Phoenix is not playing a cartoon character except when he gets hit. Because
Yeah.
he's so he walks back to the back of the parlor there. Somebody whacks him on the back of the head, and he's like,
There's
"Ugh."
the it's the best, like the sound effect when he gets hit with the bat as well is so like muted. It's just there's
Yeah.
something about it that's really funny and goofy. It's this like tiny little thunk sound, and then it's just like suddenly you've passed so much time, and he wakes up next to next to the corpse of, let me get the name right, because the names are just
I forget the name. It's not sticking with me. I
um
just saw it recently though.
uh, Charlock, right? Like
Yeah,
something
that's
Charlock.
it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. Um
Gene
Again,
Sherlock,
Glenn.
Glenn, maybe.
I
Glenn
Yeah,
think it's
Charlock, that's
Glenn
it.
Sherlock.
yeah.
That's it.
And
Fucking um
there's
but
a
yeah,
lot.
like
I think it's fine.
again, the way that you experience all of this movie through Doc, and Doc is kind of perpetually stoned, but he's also like very competent and very good at what he does. And so there's this like slight disconnect between his clear competency and his like somewhat impaired perception of the world.
Mhm.
And so like you get the sense that he's like internalizing, he's able to kind of like get on well with just about everyone that he interacts with. He's able to extract information. He's able to he's able to kind of like balance different parallel narrative threads. Like there's one
Mhm.
whole narrative thread with
Yeah.
Owen Wilson and Gina Malone that seems kind of disconnected from the rest of the story, but ultimately kind of like folds into it. and I'm trying to track that. I'm trying to like and he's able to keep on top of all of this, but like there's also the sense with which you feel he's sort of like perpetually impaired to a certain extent, and
Yeah. I
and
think
like
it
that
speaks
adds a really
to
interesting quality to the experience of watching the movie, where you're like never quite sure if you're actually seeing everything or if what you're seeing is actually what's really happening. Like one of my favorite scenes is at the very end, the final encounter with Bigfoot
oh
in
yeah,
the
we're just like
apartment,
up in the
and
trap door.
and it's like it's hard for me watching that to tell like how real any of it is,
Hmm.
you know, like breaking down the door and then just like, scoffing the weed and just disappearing. Like all of it feels like a complete like fever dream, uh like like hallucination. And
I
it's the real
think
moment at the end of the movie where it's like I start reflecting back on the movie and like how much of what I've seen is actually like what really happened versus a sort of like half remembered, half hallucinated, like feverish, uh, acid stoked like enhancement of what really happened.
It's a little
Hmm.
funny to me that I already mentioned the part where he gets hit on the back of the head because I have a small like pet theory that nothing in this movie actually happened at the point after which he got hit on the head with that bat.
Hmm.
I
That's
think
like
it
the most
speaks
obvious like
to
cut in the continuity and in the timeline of the movie where like it's the first moment where I'm watching this movie. I sit down to watch it with this mindset specifically of like, okay, I'm going to really lock into the story here and try and make sure I can, I'm going to really give this my full attention. And that's the first point of the movie where it feels like you're almost
well, you're
like
deprived.
as a viewer, yeah, you're deprived and you're kind of like
Yeah.
set back from the story in a way
Because
that
something
does
happens
more and more.
and you have no idea what it is. Like the viewfinder that you have has been turned off, so there's a blank. I also think right in that sequence, there's some really good, to your point, like kind of like dreamy surrealist, where you see like the guys in the desert fatigues that like get up and like are like crawling towards the place, and you're
Yeah.
like, there's a certain it's a paranoia. If we wanted to go to the Pynchon source, so there's like a paranoia that pervades everything. And I was gonna say, to me, his overmatched quality is not so much that he can't handle all the ins and outs and what have yous. It's that he truly is navigating a world that he no longer belongs to, that he doesn't understand. Like he is from this hippie world that has now eroded into progressing. We're not quite in Reagan world, but we're progressing towards Reagan world because this whole thing is wrapped up in like California real estate and like moves about like, oh yeah, we wanted to get like a white guy on the Las Vegas Strip. Like there are these silent backing powers that be power brokers that are moving pieces on the board, Chinatown style, where it's like, yeah, the reason why he can't follow anything is he's looking on the surface and there is stuff brewing like an earthquake beneath the surface that's going to tear all of this world up. It's already started. The fissures have already begun in this story. It's not like we're fully before, fully after, but we're just in this steady decline kind of Hunter S. Thompson, the watermark has already passed,
Yeah.
and we're just fucking fading into oblivion, basically. And in that way, it's like, yeah, you're not going to win this fight. You know what I mean? No matter what you discover, you're still just like a pawn in a system, in a thing, you know? There's no good outcome here, which I think is the necessity of the subplot with Owen Wilson and that, so that you have a kind of like some level of moral closure, some level of decency and goodness. Also, it reminds me of Blade Runner 2049. Like
Yeah,
that
there's a
ending
lot
is
of
very Blade Runner-y.
um and he sort of gets ping-ponged around by the powers that be in a very similar way, like
Mhm.
structurally to that movie.
Right.
The big
See,
emotional takeaway for me is what it is like to really miss somebody, somebody who has this weird way of working their way back into your life somehow through, things that you wouldn't necessarily predict or understand totally, but they just keep ending up at your doorstep for whatever reason, metaphorically or literally. And it's just about sort of feeling, in a way, left behind by that and by someone who has
Mhm.
gone on to do different things with their lives. And
Both
it, and
this
it's
and
it's then
Vineland share that characteristic where the woman has not only moved on, but has seemingly moved on to somebody who's kind of like part of a system that both the main character and the woman were at one time rebelling against. right? There are these
Mm.
hippie guys, and it's not just that she's like left him. It's not just that she's with another man. It's that she's with this guy who is like a rich and powerful person, which is almost like, so who are you? How real was any of that? How real are you? How much of the things that made me think that I love you are even true about you? XYZ, you know? In this case, in this specific movie.
Which is sort of why I've never really gotten too hung up on like the actual by beat plot elements of this movie because I think it's you know so like The Big Lebowski is The Big Sleep
Mhm.
and this is The Long Goodbye, and one of those stories is sort of inherently more hazy and sort of
Yeah.
led by emotions
Yeah. Long
as the
goodbye.
driving
Something happened
force.
to my boy. Oh man, it's kind of like you're both compelled because there are these external forces pushing Marlowe into the story, but then the internal feeling of like I just need to know what happened to my friend, right? I just need to reckon like figure out like why did this happen? And it's the same thing here. And I guess to the extent that you can't solve it speaks to the idea that like you can't ever solve why somebody leaves your life, you know? It leaves you in this state of wanting to understand or discover, and there's no clear answer. Just, life trucking on ahead. Also, Martin Short shows up for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely
that's
unbelievable scene when they arrive at his office, and he just sort of like he immediately greets him and then just like gets called away and just pulls down his pants and shuffles off. Um, just and then like when they all pile into the car and it's so farcical that
Mhm.
midsection of the movie where you're just kind of like all the way up
The-
to the Chris Golladon Institute, which I think is where you finally actually see Mickey Wolfman for the first time, played by Eric Roberts, and he's sort of like a complete husk, just
right.
sort of hollowed out and
Mhm.
and hopeless.
It's an interesting idea that like the halls of power are filled with like horny goofballs and like dudes who are like zooted out of their minds and have like no coherency left. Like there
Yeah.
probably are those like Dick Cheney types pulling strings, but ultimately it's just history as nightmare paranoia. Like there is no resolution, there is no good answer. Everything is just like vacant and hollow and self-destructive.
Hmm.
There is like a real pessimism to the worldview here. I mean that you just can't divorce yourself from if you're reading Pynchon. Just not a positive view of the world or America or the future or the present.
A
I sort
valid
of
outlook, all things considered.
yeah. I sort of do have trouble being 110% on board with this movie as a whole, as I'm on sort of on the whole, where I'm like, I love it on a scene by scene basis, but it doesn't like
Mm.
100% come together for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's how
But
it's approached, is a scene by
yeah,
scene kind of movie, you know?
and the thing about that makes that sort of like I love it, but it's difficult, is that The Big Lebowski does exist.
Hmm.
It's it is a very similar kind of story
More of an
with
outright comedy with the
yeah,
Collins.
but it has a better lead. Uh, I think a better supporting cast, even though the supporting cast is really good. Um, I don't think it looks quite as good. This is the last Ellsworth
Hmm.
collaboration that Paul Thomas
Hmm.
Anderson had, and obviously Lebowski is Deakins, but they have very different styles about them.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think I prefer the style of Vice a little more. Um, but it is this similar story of guy getting caught up in, you know, powers that be, conspiracies and
Looking for
stuff.
a girl who may not even really be missing.
Yeah. And I just find one a lot more entertaining and sort of iconic and
Mhm.
enjoyable to watch than the other, which is not totally fair.
I think the complexities matter more in Lebowski, which is, so
Yeah.
that's a Chandler story, and Chandler very much approaches the noir like scene by scene, tone of the scene, structure of the scene. But it's also important to remember that while that is very Chandler, those guys are also very big Dashiell Hammett guys. You go back to Miller's Crossing, and that's like Glass Key, Red Harvest type of Dashiell Hammett stuff, where the plot twists matter. The complexity and the layers and how everything stacks up matters. So the kind of like smear that Big Lebowski does over the top of it with the stoner stuff is like a haze that your brain works through and actually gets to something. And it's like, oh shit, okay, I get it. Inherent Vice denies you that. I mean, it's not that you can't. There's a cabal of fucking dentists and heroin dealers, and they're all in cahoots with each other. They're selling smaller bags. They're selling bigger purses and tighter pants. It's one of those kinds of things is basically what you're looking at. But
Yeah.
it's way less interested in tying a knot. It's way less interested in having your brain click in and understand it, which almost makes it invigorating every time you put it on because you're like, no, I'm gonna get it this time. I'm gonna, like Ryley was saying, this is the time I'm just gonna follow it end to end, and it never really does that. It doesn't. It
And
doesn't.
there's
It
like
denies it to you.
I agree with Morgan. It's really difficult not to think of Lebowski a lot while watching this. Just how the complexities of the story sort of spiral outward, and the difference, of course, as you say, being that like the complexities matter more in Lebowski's story. They're kind of, and also a lot of the humor is tied in so directly to like these small little plot developments and how they wrap back to the wider
Mhm.
story. And I think with Vice, like it comes down to tone as well. Like
Mhm.
Zach was saying, it's a very pessimistic. It's a dark movie.
It's
It's an
mournful.
uncomfortable movie, and
It's
there's
a
a
little
lot
bit of an
like
elegy, I think. Like if you get like early Pynchon, it's very brash, it's very experimental, it's very like it's trying to be funny. It actually, I think you could almost compare it to early and late PTA. V, super experimental, very throw everything at the wall, big, loud, crazy, early debut novel. Inherent Vice is like it's one of the more complicated PTA movies. It's one of the simpler Pynchon novels, is my understanding. So it's but that tone, it's mournful and reflective, it's pessimistic, it's an elegy, things like that. And I think those get carried in here, even though it's not like a bitter, dark movie necessarily. You think of it more funny and light than that, but it has those things in
mm,
there.
a lot of the comedy comes like directly out of like the bleakness and the
Mhm.
absurdity as well. Like I think of one of the movie's big early like memorable laughs, which is where the joke is essentially like this Jenna Malone's poor unseen
Yeah.
child that's kind of been ravaged by like a pregnancy of heroin addiction. Like there's like little moments all throughout
Ah!
that where like the the moments of levity that you get are so kind of tied into the inherent cruelness and
Mhm.
sort of like brokenness of the world
But then
that
that
it's all
scene
set in.
also ends with like the two of those characters hugging in the doorway in a way that's like very tender and like, so we kind of tightrope walk between it's bleak, it's funny, it's really touching, you know what I mean? And not really losing it. I think as a director, he has a really strong sense on that scene by scene basis of getting you to that emotional response and then taking you to the next one, even if it's very different, but never feeling like he's out of control of that tone. It's not jarring. It's pretty smooth.
Yeah, and that mastery of tone, that ability for a movie that's sort of so uh stream of consciousness isn't the right term, but like it moves through these different like sequences with such like fluidity and such sharpness. Oh well, that's a these individual sequences which are so individually memorable and kind of moves through them fluidly. It's amazing that it works as well as it does for a movie that has so much going on a moment to moment basis, but also like it can be a little bit overwhelming as well. You can get to the end of it feeling a little bit disoriented and a little bit like thrown off in a way that I think is conducive to maybe connecting a little bit less with the movie than something that's a little bit more broadly, obviously, just a sort of comedy, like Big Lebowski or a Coen Brothers film, that takes from those slightly different sets of influences.
I'll
You
shout
get
out
to
a
the end of
quick
Inherent Vice and you feel like you've just been on a roller coaster. You've gone through the ringer a
I'll
bit.
shout out a quick rest in peace to Michael K. Williams, who plays a Black Panther extremist named Tariq Khalil and drops maybe the best line of this entire movie where it's like, apart from Glenn, I never cared for the company of Nazis. There's so many good bars in this movie. One of my favorites that I've never caught it before. I think it's in the book, but I never caught it before because it's just some offhanded dialogue while that opening needle drop's still going on, where it's like Godzilla says to Mothra, man, let's go eat someplace. Just like very sharp
That's
dialogue.
that's a fucking Mitch Hedberg line. It sounds like
Huh.
Godzilla says to Mothra, man. let's get something to eat.
Fuck it, let's go bowling.
Banger movie. I remember being like really enthralled with this the first time I saw it, like not to the level of the There Will Be Blood master that preceded it, but this was like kind of like Cole said about Licorice Pizza, like this felt a little lighter. It felt a little more direct as an adaptation, and it was, but with all these different like complexities and things that we've talked about, that was like we haven't lost the sauce exactly. We're just taking this step into like a little bit of a lighter, easier mode before we turn the jets back on with Phantom Thread. Like this period of his career to me
Mhm.
is like truly kind of undeniable. Like it's just like a run of pure unadulterated success where this is probably the relative low point and I still think it's phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, for all the sort of talking down on Hard Eight that I did earlier relative to all this stuff, it's only relative to the heights that he reached. Other that's an extremely solid, sturdy movie,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and that's
It's
and that's
it's
and
con
that's by a good clip his least compelling, I think.
mm. It's not like he's like a particularly esoteric filmmaker, but like it is impressive to me how continually he's able to get like creative projects bankrolled that have this sort of like
Oh,
even
sure.
to the extent of like one battle after another, like what that is. Like
Mhm.
his second like Pynchon adaptation with Leo DiCaprio, like the ability that PTA has of just sort of getting like these really interesting, like creative, idiosyncratic movies that don't necessarily have an obvious like dovetailing with the mainstream moment.
Mhm.
His ability to get those made like so consistently is really impressive. Just the
I think a lot of it rides off the fact that Boogie Nights obviously has that place in the cultural canon. Magnolia made decent money, largely because it's the starriest cast, but it had a big budget too. And then There Will Be Blood. Like there have just been those points where it's really coalesced into a degree of success, even if it's
Mhm.
not like a major financial success, then at
Yeah.
least like a critical and cultural success that I think keeps that rolling. But to
mm,
me, like if you want to point out his most esoteric movie, it is The Master, and it is it's a sharp left turn after There Will Be Blood. Like There Will Be Blood is not an easy pill to swallow for the entirety of it, but I think it is a movie that like is obviously so like obviously excellent to anybody that watches it. I'm not saying that you couldn't watch it and dislike it. I'm not saying that you couldn't watch it and be like, that was okay. I think it's a little overrated, but it's just like it's kind of thunderous. And I think the master has some of those characteristics, especially in the performances, to
Mhm.
like in the imagery. Like there are those things that tell you like you're watching a movie that is really accomplished and ultimately really compelling, I would say. But damn, it is one of the most difficult to digest. Not necessarily one of the most difficult to dissect, but you find that the longer you dissect it, the more layers of it you find.
Yeah.
But I think the master is the one where you are just thrown into a character in Freddie Quell, played by Joaquin Phoenix, immediately that is like, who the hell is this? You're thrown into an actual cult led by Philip Seymour Hoffman, and it's like, who the hell are these people? And never do you find an easy answer, or never does it move in the direction that would be the most predictable. Just to take it back as maybe the person here who is the most aged up when There Will Be Blood came out and like remembers what it was like to see that in theaters and remembers what a, I don't know, Bill Hader, SNL, like cultural groundswell that movie had. This movie was like Yeezus by Kanye West. Like after My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, all eyes were on this guy. Like, what the fuck is this follow-up gonna be? Like, really, what is this gonna be? And so this information starts coming out about it. Like, we know it's gonna be kind of a Scientology riff. Like, there's clear indicators that it's gonna be about this. And then you watch it, and it's fucking practically, even though it's all over the place, it's practically disinterested in that. It's such a swerve of anything you might walk in expecting it to be or expecting it to do in terms of its tone, its conclusions. And, I don't know. I can't really put myself back in that time to remember what other people thought of it. I know that I found it tough to digest at first. I know
I,
that for
I
me it was like, huh, okay.
I was 12 when the movie came out, and I didn't see it until years later, but I was still sort of plugged into like YouTube movie critic stuff, and like nobody shut up about it for the rest of the year, even
Hmm.
if it was like sort of not really getting it or outright disliking it or really liking
Right.
it but not totally understanding it. That was definitely the feeling that I got from it.
Compared to something like Django Unchained, which is what won screenplay that year for Quentin Tarantino, way more. Okay, I get what this movie's about. I understand. Like it practically puts it on the label for you what it's about. This was just a significantly more enigmatic movie. And I think coming off of something like There Will Be Blood that was layered, it's dense. Like there's stuff to peel out of it, but it's never unclear. Like commerce. It's commerce, it's religion, it's American history. This is also American history, but it's maybe a less understood time, and we're getting into these like thorny emotional things. Again, it just I guess to put it bluntly, one, the lead character is really, really, really gross, right? It's really like,
Yeah.
ugh, I don't
Mhm.
want to be around this guy. And then two, it's you would think that the cult thing would lead to more criticism or more irony, or like these guys are a bunch of frauds, which I think is in here, but it's so much more compassionate. So Morgan, you wrote when you last saw this, you were like, I don't know that anybody knows what this movie's about. And I was just thinking in my head, I'm like, I have ideas about what the movie's about, not one concrete thing, but I was just thinking because we had done Boogie Nights, how like I think this is about found family. Like I think this is
Mhm.
about a place outside of the world, out at sea at first on a boat, and you've got this leader that's maybe even similar to Jack Horner. Is he real? Is he a charlatan? Does he want to be an artist? What is his dream? And all these people in his orbit. Obviously, the dynamic is a little more implied to be twisted than Boogie Nights, but I
And the
think
movie
that,
is
like,
about the dynamic in a way that Boogie Nights is a little more sprawling.
sure, it's certainly much more about the two main guys, Freddie and Lancaster. But I think that both of them, you're like, well, this is unconventional, but there's a lot of tenderness here. And I think that throws people off. I think they watch it and they're like, what? Why would that be?
It's
You
yeah, it's
expect
a
something
little
more
bit
ironic.
like especially you see this so many times in the scenes where Freddy is like in the background while uh Lancaster is like speaking to the people or essentially on his pulpit or whatever. And he's like this little hunchback Igor from Frankenstein looking ass. And it's like
But
it's so strange that anybody could take pity on this lost creature that Joaquin Phoenix is playing. And it's especially strange that it's this guy who holds significant sway over his group of
Mhm.
people. And it's
mm,
like,
So,
so that leads you automatically into thinking, okay, what does this man in this position of power want from
Yeah.
this lowly
mhm.
creature? And we don't ever
Yeah.
get anything resembling an answer to that.
Hmm.
So I mean, I think I have an understanding of it, at least in my perception. So Freddie Quell, I mean, the movie starts with this just fantastic 20-minute sequence,
Yeah.
just introducing this character and kind of immersing you in his world. And he is a total chaos agent. Like he is impulsive, he is
Hmm.
violent, and he's vulgar. And that is like the one of the very first shots you see of him is just this like monkey man jerking off into the ocean. Like this, the
Right.
pose he is just absolutely
Bro is doing
Humping,
shit
humping the.
with his left shoulder blade that I've
yeah.
never seen a human being do.
Yeah. Yeah, and humping the sand lady. Yeah, absolutely. Like so you just get this like this this primitive like
just
being
to
that you're kind
just to
of
peel into it,
immersed
the
in that
main
world with.
character of V that this is lightly based on is called Benny Profane.
Hell
Benny
yeah, dude.
Profane. And it's a similar, like he's an ex-sailor. It's the 50s. He ends up winding up with this in the book there. It's the whole sick crew, and it's like a group of bohemians. As
mm,
opposed to here, it's been retrofitted to a new thing. But it's like the light basis of that, where it's almost like he's a sailor returning from war, and then we're gonna go dissect into a specific subculture of America.
Yeah.
Be
And so the
Benny,
aspect
presumably short for benzodiazepine.
and so the aspect of Freddy as kind of a veteran essentially is something which is kind of backgrounded at first. Like it's
Mhm.
not a context that is like made especially apparent in how he's introduced. Like obviously you get the sense that he's a sailor, he's probably Navy,
But you
like
never
he's
see
got
him
that.
in battle, right? They're just
No,
fucking
yeah.
around on the beach.
The closest we get
So
is like the second shot of the movie where you see him in that boat. That's presumably it looks like it might be heading towards like a D-Day style breach, but he's in the boat and you just see him peer out with the helmet. And then it cuts to the after stuff where they're on the
Yeah.
beach.
So
Right.
you have enough context to kind of view Freddie as someone who's been sort of apart from civilized society for an extended period of time, has
Mhm.
sort of like presumably been traumatized in some way. It's unclear exactly by what. There are references at various points of the film to traumatic incidences in Freddie's life, but it's never something that the movie's interested in drilling down into. It's just sort of stuff that you fill in the blanks based on the information that you get. But you have this kind of like he is presented in this like extremely vulgar and impulsive and violent way as this sort of like this human that is has completely surrendered to their sort of base instincts essentially, and acts in a very sort of moment to moment way, almost always in opposition to something. As soon as he's able to settle into a job like as the department store photographer, like he needs some form of opposition that he can work against. I love the scene where he's like he's lighting the guy, and he just sort of keeps slowly moving the standing light like closer to his face.
So, Riley, this I'm glad you're here to note this because I would have noted it without you. But that guy was probably most known for he was the bartender on Deadwood, but it's Bill from The Last of Us in the game.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's funny. Okay, that's cool. Um, but yeah, so he's presented in this way, right? Like these great sequences, fantastic setup. And I think then when he comes across his path with Lancaster, that's a really interesting character where you gradually get more and more of a sense of what his sort of like philosophy is, like what it is that he's peddling. And it is very sort of like it's very Scientology in the sense that it's
Mhm.
sort of like it's explicitly a rejection of like psychology and like Jungian, Freudian like approaches to understanding human behavior.
Right.
But what
We
it
are not
really is kind
animal
of like
and
cherry picking elements of those sort of like pseudo scientific belief systems into this new sort of like quasi spiritual, like Buddhist esque sort of like
yeah,
we live multiple lives type sort of like
yeah.
hokum. The point being that Lancaster kind of sees himself as a sort of like expert in human behavior, and then like
Mhm.
has this sort of
Yes,
like
yes.
understanding of how to kind of maximize the human experience for people. And so I think he views
He's
Freddy
gonna
almost
lasso the
instantly.
dragon.
Yeah, he views Freddy almost instantly as a kind of like project, as something
Yes.
that is like
Like a
going
pure
to be
project.
this
Like
this
someone who
definitive.
if Lancaster sees himself as like the pure, because I put a quote from him in my review that happens early on. It's like and Freddie snuck onto the boat. He slept overnight. He's like, would you scrub yourself? Would you make yourself clean? And if Dodd sees himself as having been scrubbed, he's the marble pillar, then Freddie is all black. He's all soot. He's all caked with filth. So it's like a pure, oh, I'm not looking at someone that has any other, right. He's never seen a psychiatrist. I mean, he has. We actually see him with a military psychiatrist. What do you see in this picture? It's a cock, but it's upside down. That's a pussy. That's a cock going into a pussy. So he has literally seen a psychiatry, but it hasn't taken. This is not a person who has ever uh done self-reflection. So it's like a
Yeah.
pure I'm trying to think of like a really good example. It's like buying a property that's just never been used. Like it's a clean white page for you to scribble
Like
on and scrawl on.
it's also like it's worth noting that psychiatrist scene, like the way that the psychiatry and like that mental health is presented there is like a Rorschach test. Like the point
Yeah,
being that system, those services are so primitive, like they're not really set up to actually help people or understand
yeah,
people very well at
Yeah,
all. Like
exactly.
Freddy exists in a system that has nothing for him and that has no way of making him better, or at least no interest and like
right.
trying to actually make him better and help him fit into society, which is why Lancaster is so appealing because he's able to present himself in a way where all of the aspects of who Freddy is are traits that don't need to be sort of shorn off or that need to be necessarily like fixed or healed. Like it's interesting. Like he almost accepts Freddy for who he is, while also kind of like wanting to work on him as this sort of project that he has as well.
Longer term
Um,
in the movie, Freddy also becomes like And this is a conflict between the two of them, but it's also something that Dodd uses to his advantage. Freddy's like an enforcer.
Mm.
He's a heavy.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to use that exact term. I was going to use the term heavy as well. And it's ironic, right? Because that scene, the scene you were referencing earlier, later in the movie when Dodd is speaking at an event and Freddy's just kind of like slinking in the back there, is the obvious, like, he doesn't look like a heavy. He doesn't really have like much skill, but he is violent and he will absolutely like an attack dog, he will take down Dodd's critics. It's a great scene between the two of them where he almost speaks to him like a child. What does he say? He's like, we can't do that.
Yeah.
We can't. I can't remember what
Filthy
he says
animal or
exactly.
whatever.
He's Luca
Yeah.
Brasi in the body of emaciated Joaquin Phoenix.
He's just like
Just a,
all no body fat, pure muscle. Like the scene where he rips up the jail cell is always very
Yeah.
funny to me.
he's like a living
Handcuffed him, like,
tendon.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just
He
shred
kicks that toilet like 2 times and it's
Yeah, and just
destroyed.
shatters it.
So
Like,
so that was like
I was
an
like, where the
antique.
fuck are you getting your strength from? Like,
yeah.
ow.
A couple things. One about that in my what the rewatchables calls half-assed internet research that I did on this movie. I saw that was like a preserved prison.
Okay.
And he did not anticipate being able to kick that toilet to pieces, but he did,
Okay.
and he was
Nice.
just like, I'm just gonna keep going. The second thing is I was watching an interview with Paul Thomas Anderson from around when this movie came out, and he
Mhm.
talked about a John Huston documentary that I think it's John Huston that he took some. I'll put the title of it in the in post when I remember what it is because I don't remember it now. Um, that he took influence from, and the line that it's a documentary about World War II soldiers sort of reacclimating through the therapy that we see simulated in the movie, and it's a similar case of where like he was lifting things from the John C. Holmes documentary and Boogie Nights and inserting them into that movie because there's a scene in that John Huston documentary where uh, a soldier is across from the therapist and he says the line that Freddie says. He says, like, I suffered a case of what folks in your profession might call nostalgia. Like that line is lifted and put into the screenplay. So it's another interesting case of just like him finding little pieces of documented life about his very particular subjects and just integrating them wholesale into the movie. I thought that was really interesting.
I'm very compelled, not just by the dynamic between Dodd and Quell, but like the actual relationship. And I'm making a distinction here because the dynamic is one of them is this powerful guy and the other one is his, person, and where does the power exist between the two of them? The other one is just like, do they like each other? Because I think Morgan, you were talking about if you see Inherent Vice as this movie about what it's like to miss someone that's gone, this ultimately ends up becoming about somebody that you care about but have to move on from. Like you're like, we actually can't keep doing this. It's like my boy will not grow up and I need to get the fuck away
Yeah.
from him type of thing. He's no more of that boy's hooch. But so it's interesting to think about, do they care about each other? Do they love each other? Are they good for each other? XYZ, like their relationship dynamics. And I think one of them comes from the patient doctor dynamics that exist between the two of them, but also how that makes Dodd. Because I think what Dodd ultimately realizes is like, I can't help this guy. The tools that I thought worked on the other people, that depends on them like believing in something. It depends on them having the desire to work towards something. This guy has desires, but his desires are this deep and they change moment to moment. When you ask him a question, like anyone, he's elusive. He dodges the question. He changes the subject. He outright lies. And then sometimes his honesty is quite frank, but in that frankness, eluding any sense of like, he'll tell you the worst thing about himself, and then it's like, do you ever feel guilt about the way that you are? And he's like, no. Like just he's Teflon. There's no way to break him down. There's no way to build him up. So I think it ultimately becomes a mirror that Dodd's worldview is damaged. And we see that in the interaction with like Laura Dern in the second half, where she's like, well,
Mhm.
you changed how the formula works. You're supposed to say what are you experiencing? And now you're saying, what do you remember? And now you're saying,
Yeah, it's like
what do you
imagine.
imagine? And
Yeah.
he's like pissed, like he gets pissed off, but like it's like you see that his belief has started to crack, to falter. And in a way, instead of making it seem like he's this exposed charlatan who is going to double and triple down, he becomes more human about it. He becomes more like tender and delicate. He's like, huh, maybe I had this shit wrong. I don't know. That it's he doesn't really know. You don't really know. And I think that that's compelling. I think the
And
other
it's
connection that exists between, sorry, you should go.
sorry, it's just fascinating the way that they rub off on each other because it's like at the start of the movie, it's like Lancaster, or when we beat both of these characters, it's like Lancaster is all ego and Joaquin is all id.
Mhm.
Freddy is all id. And it becomes like throughout the movie, it becomes like, okay, so Lancaster is now 80% ego, but there's 20% id, and we see that come out in the pig fuck scene.
Yeah.
And when he yells at Laura Dern in that scene later on that you were
Mm.
just mentioning. And we see
I love
Freddy
her
sort of
frown when he's
yeah.
looking at him. It's just so pitiful.
Yeah.
She
And
is
she
like
has the greatest frown in all of movies, so
it's her and Florence. Um but
Marmee and Amy.
yeah, shout out what are those? Never
March.
mind.
The
Yeah,
March women.
The March family. There we go. Um
what's miscast?
Shut the fuck up. Um if you know the questions to your answers, why do you ask pig fuck? Fuck that up. I messed that up, but you know what I mean. Um so it's like 80% ego and then 20% it on Lancaster. And then conversely, Freddy will like go to these gatherings where like anytime we see him before meeting Lancaster, he would just be like plowing through stuff and like hitting on people. Where and
Mhm.
instead in these gatherings, he's making himself sort of a part. He's sort of like takes on like a wallflower-esque role in those situations where for it's the rare scenes in the movie where he's not kind of the perspective character.
Mhm.
Um,
Mm.
and he's like he those are the moments where he is like 20% ego and 80% id. It's like they've rubbed off on each other in ways that even
Yeah.
when they go their separate ways, the percentage of both just kind of keeps going up.
Mm.
They have like they're heading in inverse directions, I think, and that's something that I found particularly interesting to observe on my most recent rewatch. Is that it's not necessarily that Dodd's completely collapsing by the end of the movie, but like as
Mhm.
you say, Zach, his
The
foundation
word
is
I used
eroded
was
somewhat.
deflating.
Mm.
Like I
Like
and
his
I'll get into that a little bit. Like it's a Greek thing. It's actually like biblical. It's like this idea of people that puff themselves up. I forget the actual Greek word, but you puff yourself up, right? And you make
mm,
yourself seem very big and very important. You got people fucking calling you master, right?
mm,
To deflate for him is a good thing. It's, for we think about deflating an ego as being, potentially destructive or sad or like somebody hitting rock bottom or something. It's like, no, 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 no. You need to deflate. You need to deflate. And then I don't know that Quell you would say inflates, but there is a certain, sense of like a foundation of self being built, I think is where
mm.
you're headed here.
And
Yeah.
it's interesting the way
Absolutely.
that
It's like
reflects, sorry, this is just a brief note, but it's interesting the way that this reflects on Dodd because he gets more successful. The movement grows as the movie continues, like to the point where the final scene between them is in this giant office building that he has. And so it's like his deflating his own beliefs a little bit has had an inverse effect on his success. Like his sense of self has gone down a little bit, but that means that people connect with him more. We don't ever see
Mhm.
that directly, I don't think, but it's interesting to note by the changes in environment of the film.
I have a slightly different read, I guess, of that ending in terms of like where Dodd has ended up because it scans to me like someone who's become like they're at their most reclusive and they're most kind of
Mhm.
receding from society, and perhaps someone who has lost a lot of the charm and the ability to kind of like easily manipulate people that they once kind of based and built their success up off of. Now he seems a little bit more like a husk, and there's something kind of like weak and almost sort of like pathetic to him about that final scene that they have together. um
I guess I don't
also
disagree. It's just that it's like I think that's sort of also just the way I'm reading it is like a little bit that his inward, more drawing inward mode is like sort of a result of the relative success that the movement has
Mm.
seen.
He moves to like England, I think. I can't remember exactly where he like, but
It's like
he leaves the
we're going
States.
overseas or something. Yeah.
I think
Yeah, he leaves.
that is kind of drawn from Hubbard a little bit because that's the whole thing with L. Ron
Absolutely.
Hubbard is that he was such an enemy of the people because he was a hack and a fraud and made enemies throughout the legitimate medical associations in America. And so he would spend time at sea to
Mm,
because one, it was like sovereign waters and you could just do whatever the fuck you wanted out there. And then two, just to avoid the scrutiny and the pressure, which is where this
mm,
character opens, but I think it's in Hubbard's life that never went away. Like until the day that he died, he was either a recluse, he was living abroad, he was literally like doing his Scientology stuff at sea just
mm,
because it was not something that he could do freely in like on US soil.
mm. To the point where it was even called the Sea Org, right?
Yeah, I believe,
Um,
yeah, it was like basically like a marine organization of
yeah.
recruits. That's always been a thing for me. Like I love I don't want to say I love. I am
Mm,
intrigued deeply by cults as like an idea, as like a concept. I think that they're fascinating. I think that the psychology of how a person finds themselves in that place is fascinating. I guess there's like a certain danger element to it that is attractive to me. And when I say attractive, I just, again, like as a subject matter of a
mm,
book or a documentary or a film or something. And it's
mm,
Mhm.
always been like, it has always been a desire of mine that this movie would be about that more because it's not really. It's in there,
mm.
and in the marketing, you see like the Jesse Plemons, he's just making it all up as he goes along, right? You really think that's what this is going to be, and it's not. And
No.
it's strange to talk about what a movie's not, but it's also interesting to pick this subject matter and not deliver that, not really say like that's my aim here.
I think the movie
I
would have become
almost
way more conventional
Uh,
if that
oh,
happened.
oh,
Yeah.
And
amazingly so. Like completely would
Mhm.
be much more in line with There Will Be Blood, for instance.
I almost wonder if some of those things, like the Scientology thing, was what initially intrigued Anderson and kind of drew him to the idea of like creating some material based around this world, but then almost got too interested in his characters and sort of
Yeah.
like the project shifted to being a little bit more about this sort of like quasi almost homoerotic relationship that
Hmm.
these two men have with one another. This like again, because Freddie is such a like innately like wired sort of sexual individual that's kind of like
Hmm.
views almost everything through that prism, and like Dodd is someone who's like trying to like be a master of kind of like the human mind and of
Hmm.
understanding like human emotions and impulses, and they sort of like have this fiery kinetic chemistry that plays off of each other in just about every interaction they have and becomes more pronounced as the movie goes on, almost to this sort of like that final scene that they have together where it's like it's downplayed, like everything is very set it, but there's this like incredible level of like homoerotic tension underneath all of it and almost a kind of like wistful romance to sort of dressed around that as well,
I
to the
really
point where
think
the very final scene of the movie is Freddie kind of like reenacting his relationship with Lancaster while having sex with a woman. It's yeah, it becomes in a way the movie evolves into a sort of like strange romantic character
mhm.
drama about this
Mhm.
sort of like connect this strange connection that these two people have, with this attraction that they have to one another, while also the sense of which they're incontrovertibly heading in different directions and ultimately completely incompatible with one another. um and it's interesting as well that like the one of the final scenes for Freddy, not the last scene, but one of the final scenes is the scene where he goes to visit the mother of his, teenage sweetheart, quote unquote. And it's this like incredible scene because it's by far the most normal that he
Mhm.
appears in the whole movie. He's very sort of like polite and even-handed and like at various moments in the interaction where you expect he might take a more sort of like um uncomfortable or sort of wrongly attached sort of approach to in like, asking about this former girl. He sort of accepts, she's moved on, she's happy now, she's fine.
Mhm.
And it's this incredible moment of like empathetic clarity for Freddy that you don't really see much sign of at all prior to that. And it's sort of, I guess, I don't know, it shows some level of like understanding of other people that he's sort of developed, either like partially as a result of this relationship he's had with Lancaster, where he's come to kind of care so deeply about him, maybe more deeply about him than he has about anyone else, apart from this, teenage girl he once tried to romance. It's interesting how their relationship sort of builds up some sense of like social competency, but also like emotional intelligence in Freddy that he didn't necessarily have before.
I don't know if it's necessarily that he didn't have it before, because you see him behave that way in the flashbacks to that teenage girl. There's a handful of scenes where it flashes back and sort of fleshes out that relationship a little bit.
Mm.
So I wonder how much of it is like the war and his experiences there sort of just completely fried his brain, and like how much of it is just like code switching. Like this is the first time in so long after the war that he's been
Well, he was
opposite somebody
also
in a conversation that he like kind of like wants to be well mannered around.
he was also sexually abused as a child as well, and that's something that kind of
Yeah.
comes about in the processing scene too. That sort of comes to light, and there are little details like that, and little inferences you can make based on the way that he interacts with women and men, that kind of tell you a little bit about let's say the developmental hurdles for Freddy that have like halted him, that have like stunted him in a lot of different
Mhm.
ways. There's like, yeah, for sure, a sense of like understanding of how to exist and on a very basic level in society that's there, but that's so corroded by all of the trauma that he's experienced and the inability to manage his own impulsivity and his own urges.
I think one of the key signifiers there that is also, to me, one of these elements that has just stuck out on like the last, I'll call it two, three. I've seen this movie a few times. So like the last two or three times I've seen it, it's the alcohol. His like clearly that is trauma response, coping mechanism, like impulsive, right? The idea that like you're literally so jonesing to be in a different mind state that you're putting like photochemicals into a beaker to create something probably toxic to drink, right? And then this becomes like a bonding thing between the two of them. Like it is the bonding thing. There's the whole first scene where they're down on the hull, down in the bottom part of the boat, and that is the hull of the boat. I don't know why I was going to say something else. And Dodd is kind of grilling him, and the whole time you're like, well, yeah, I mean, like Freddie stuck onto the boat, he's all this stuff, but you can tell that there's this intrigue, right? And as Ryley, we've already talked about, like it's the dynamic and desiring as like as a project, but there is also like just this underlying thing of like I need to drink your secret booze again and again and again. I need your sweet nectar of jet fuel and nail polish remover, witch hazel, gasoline, uh motor oil, and shellfish
Yeah,
crab
he
juice.
kind of almost presents himself like surprisingly vulnerably to Freddy really early on, in
Mhm.
that sense of like, I need this from you, that you wouldn't necessarily expect him to be approaching a lot of interactions with that,
I really
but
think
he
that there's
immediately,
there's like an artist element, there's like a clear way that you can watch this movie and see Dodd as like a charlatan, as a creative. I remember the last time I saw it when it was in theaters here, before Licorice Pizza came out, because he's trying to write book two. That's his whole thing. Like he has the book out and he's trying to write book two. And it's like, imagine Paul Thomas Anderson as this figure. Like we've just made There Will Be Blood. Now what? Now what the fuck am I supposed to do? Right? It's that characteristic. But then if you flip it and we look at Freddy's mixology as his own type of creative expression and the way that that brings him in with Dodd, there's something there too, I think. And the way that maybe in film, a director and an actor are each working for each other and provide, you know what I mean? Like I'm doing this for you, you're doing this for me, and we're each kind of
Mhm.
meeting in the middle.
Sort of this toxic codependency.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, even if like Dodd choosing to be vulnerable in that moment and saying that I need something from you isn't in itself another manipulation tactic. Because I could see somewhere in his sort of twisted understanding or desire to understand the human mind, he would, maybe write something in the book that's like, to first make a proper connection with someone, you must
Mhm.
desire something from them or whatever.
Maybe. I'll tell you what I thought of watching it this time, and maybe it's just the PTA of it all and thinking about his whole filmography preparing for this. Is that it reminded me a little bit. There's a lot of differences, but it reminded me a little bit of the dynamic in Phantom Thread
Absolutely.
of
Yeah.
DDL and Vicky Creeps, like
Yeah.
the sense of which, it is a sort of like toxic codependency in a certain sense, but ultimately it's something that flourishes into a harmonious, like dynamic where they both get something that they need from each
Right.
other and it kind of works.
Kind of like Morgan
Um,
was saying, it's not a 50-50 compromise. It's like an 80-20 compromise. We're just gonna take the edge off a little bit there, Reynolds. We're just gonna slow you down just a tiny bit. I
yeah,
love that fucking movie, man. I
that
love
that
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 fucking
movie's
movie,
amazing.
man.
That movie and this movie, these are his two peaks for me. The most accomplished movies he's made in terms of everything. I
I
have a
do
very
think
personal connection to Magnolia as well, and that sort of like makes it hard to rank compared to. But these two, but The
agreed. I'm
Master
in
and
a similar
Phantom
place.
Thread for me are like the two where everything aligns in the most profound way for me,
Mhm.
of any of
I,
the movies he's made.
I think Phantom Thread could be the gold medalist here. If it's not, it's nipping at the heels. I think I would make the case this is the most visually beautiful Paul Thomas Anderson movie, which is not a low bar. Like Blood is beautiful, Phantom or Punch Drunk Love. I mean Phantom Thread just has that gorgeous daylit kind of, rustic, fashionable, like it just imagery wise. But like man, like the color blue has never looked more blue than it does in this movie. It's just
It's
a
just all
gorgeous fucking
it's
yeah.
all so rich. Even just
Yeah.
like
The
Yeah.
the
lighting and the textures on faces, there's the movie Her, which is shot by Hoyt van Hoytema and would be the next year, is like my other favorite Joaquin thing. Both of these two movies have so much close-up face work on Joaquin Phoenix, where he's like leaning back or like he's got his furrowed brow and he's just all ridges and shadows, and then he cracks the tiniest little smile. It's so much of that imagery throughout this
like
Yeah,
the informal conditioning, is that what he called it? Was
processing,
it informal processing scene?
where he's not
The-
blinking.
yeah, it's like just it's I mean it's pretty simple reverse 180 stuff, but it's also just like it has that diner scene and Heat level of like this is just two dudes talking to each other, but it's also like I am completely drawn in by what they're saying to each other and the way that it's performed
mm,
right now.
Mhm.
mm.
It's
The kind of
utterly
like
singular.
the way that Dodd will kind of like parry joust, like try to like dig in deeper. If he thinks he's been lied to, he'll repeat the question. They do the infraction, he comes back again. The answers start changing. And then just on a purely silly level, maybe because I've seen the blooper version of it so many times, the bit where they're smoking at the end of it is, oh, I love Cool's minty flavor.
Mm.
Yeah,
Is one of my
it's
favorite
interesting.
like
Like
frames in a PTA movie is the two of them smoking cigarettes together.
Mhm.
it's interesting. I think I agree. Like this might be the most visually like accomplished movie, or
Yeah.
just I don't know however you want to put
Just
it.
think
It's
about
interesting as
like
well
the
because
opening where you've got like the soldiers that again, they're not soldiers, they're sailors, and they're all like shirtless and they're like fighting on the beach. And it kind of has
mm,
the vibe like if you've recently seen like Barry Lyndon, right? There's a point when all the guys are like they're shirtless and they're boxing, but the imagery is just so like organic. It feels like it's growing up out of the sand in a way that's like so like all the stuff that Cole I think is kind of reserved about with those early movies is gone here. There is no trying to prove anything. He just has the shit.
But
mm,
there's gaining the skills over time to eventually where he becomes his own cinematographer.
Right.
Starting Phantom
yeah,
Thread.
And is I mean if this is his most beautiful movie, that's clearly number two.
Yeah.
Those would be the two. And like that's
Mhm.
him shooting his own stuff. No elsewhere. Who shot this one? I
this
don't
is
even
so I
It's
was
two
about to bring
guys.
this up. Um, well, the Okay, I've only got one here. Sorry. I've got Mihai Malamir, who
Yeah,
typically is
yeah.
Francis Ford Coppola's latest films, and also Jojo Rabbit as well for some reason. This is their only collaboration, and
Yeah.
it's not necessarily that this film has a particularly distinct look relative to other PTA movies. Like it still has a lot of the visual like camera characteristics, like a lot
I
of
think this
similar
is where
shot
he
styles
starts
that he likes to
going.
use.
I'm not much of a camera person, so you have to forgive me if you're more of a gearhead than me. But the lenses start changing here. There's a lot more flares. There's a lot more like, like a light burst hits the shot kind of thing that carries over
Mm.
really strongly. Like when you're watching Licorice Pizza, that shit is all over the place. If you watch Damien Chazelle's Babylon, he is stealing from that exact equipment list and playbook to create the same types of like textures and lighting stuff. But
Some of
I
that might
said
just be 70 millimeter stuff
could
because
be.
he's made this shift over completely. I think VistaVision is a form of 70 millimeter, so it's
Yeah.
I
even gone
sent
on.
Morgan,
And he hadn't hit VistaVision yet because VistaVision didn't come back until the Brutalist.
yeah,
So
Brutalist.
Yeah.
Um, I sent it was just a single frame to Morgan, but it was when I was watching it. To me, one of the most impressive shots of the entire film, stop me if you know where I'm going, it's early on. It's when you're walking along with Freddy. We've just been on all of his adventures on the farm and everywhere else, and he comes across the boat and he's walking and they're dancing on the boat and it's deep in the background and you continue and it's all a single shot, so you get a little
Mm.
closer to where you can actually see Dodd, and then he re-enters the frame from the left and it's like what the hell? And then the boat takes off into the distance, and
Mm.
you've got like the ring of lights and this like
mhm.
gradient sunset that's happening. And it's like, man, this is nuts that
Yeah.
this movie looks this good. And I actually had a thought about that yesterday. I had like I was just saying I'm not much of a photographer. I've done more photography and videography and stuff at work in like the last 6 months than I have ever in my career. Um, and what I've learned from it is that the hardest part of getting a shot, like getting a still shot, is staging things right and getting details and like things set up the right way. When I watched that shot this time, I had a different level of appreciation for it. And the thing I had the appreciation for was realizing the 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 way that you execute a really difficult like Gan oneer is by having really good actors, is by having actors
No,
that know
it's
when to hit their fucking marks.
it's
That is
hitting
Yeah.
the
their
entire
marks
game.
and making it look like there's still people doing natural things while doing
Yeah.
it. It's like
Yeah.
I think just from my own experiences making short films, it's like it's pretty easy making
To
and being
move a
in short films.
camera,
It's pretty easy to move a camera and it's pretty
right?
easy to get an actor to hit their mark when they know where the camera is. When they're like over here on the shore and Philip Seymour Hoffman and the crew are over on this boat and they can't necessarily see the camera movement and know when to hit their marks based on where the camera is moving. That's like rehearsed to shit, clearly, but
Right.
like just really
But then to your
impressively
point, it
staged.
looks organic. It looks natural, which is even more difficult because when you think about how it's lit and how it's truly staged, center frame are Amy and Phil dancing around each other in a circle.
Hmm.
Like they're the ones that you
Mm.
can spot, and not just because they're recognizable, but because they are framed and lit that way. That shit blows my mind. Fuck 1917. Put it in the trash can. Nothing that that movie does is ever as impressive as this 60-second version of the same thing. I mean, it's truly, and I was saying this on the last episode. It's just like PTA virtuoso stuff. The processing scene without blinking virtuoso stuff.
Yeah.
I've always really been a big fan of the I don't really know. They're almost like reprimanding and punishing him. But when the scene happens, I always think of a millennial core song, "To the window, to the wall, to the
Yeah.
Yeah,
window, to the
yeah,
wow."
yeah,
Like every
yeah,
time, but that scene is fucking phenomenal, phenomenal. It's so like
yeah,
frustrating. You're like, fuck this.
yeah.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
I'm trying to think of other like really standout just sequences. Obviously, you've got like the imagery of like the bike across the salt flats, or even just him
Yeah.
running across that cabbage farm from right to
Yeah.
left.
Mm.
Mhm. Just beautiful use of landscapes.
Hmm.
And it's
And then
like,
Greenwood just doing craziness.
Yeah.
yeah, it's it's sort of like it's like the sequence that you're talking about where it's the boat and him stumbling onto the boat and all that is sort of
Mhm.
almost unassuming in a way that his first stuff isn't. Like that's all flash, look at me, pay attention how
Right.
great this is. And that sort of, at least the first time I watched it, sort of passed me by in how impressive it really was. And that's really like the difference between the first and later parts of his career. Whereas like I don't
Mhm.
need you to look at me to know that I'm just doing incredible stuff. And it's like it is the confidence of it. It's a progression from cockiness to confidence that he
Mhm.
has across his career. And really the movie that we're not talking about it's been mentioned obviously, but that we're not talking about in focus, that's the centerpiece of that is There Will Be Blood.
100%. That opening
Mm,
scene of There Will Be Blood with the no dialogue
Yeah.
mm,
is just
Which
a
is
complete like,
essentially he kind of does that trick again here. Like there's no
yep,
talking in this movie
correct. 100%.
mm,
It's
Mhm.
very
until,
Kubricky
like the
there.
15-minute mark.
I would
Yeah.
say it's
mm.
more original and interesting here, and it's more like Kubricky in that movie, but like it truly, even if you're in love with Magnolia, as I am and as I was when I saw There Will Be Blood for the first time, you're like, whoa, okay, something has shifted in the formula here. Like,
Well, I mean,
whoa, 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 whoa.
it feels like a different guy until you start digging at it,
Yeah,
until
for
you
sure.
start seeing all of the recurring, uh, you know, proclivities. Because you said
Yeah.
that this movie is about found family earlier. I think
Hmm.
all of them are about found family. That is the one thing that sort of unites
Blood
the
is really
entire.
like building ourselves our own community based on our own rules because we have the agency provided to us by successful commerce. Like there
Right.
is a positive influence that Plainview has in that movie in spite of being a rat bastard of a man. And then it's the dynamic between father and son in that movie, like there are these recurring things. I think as we move into this though, it just so little impulse to crowd please with any part of
Yeah.
this. I think that's maybe the
Yeah.
thing. There is nothing in here where there's like the oil derrick explosion where you're just like, the whole crowd's going to be into that part. There's
Yeah.
there's
Mm.
nothing. There's nothing like that here.
Mhm.
I think that
Difficult
I
character, difficult movie.
I said in the lead up to this episode, these episodes when we were sort of formulating them, that There Will Be Blood is the outlier of the whole filmography to me.
Mm.
And I think that's because that movie to me is about hatred
There's no
primarily.
romance. There's no like, the central pairing is Plainview and Sunday, Paul
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sunday. And
it's
there's
about
no
somebody
love
who's
there.
like completely consumed eventually by his desire to
I
see
would say
someone
the
go
two of
down.
them are our boys, Michael Ginsberg and Don Draper in the elevator.
Yeah,
Mm.
I don't think about you at
I
all.
don't think about you at all. Theme. Most
I
misunderstood
think
meme on the market, but we'll talk about
Yeah.
that
I
some other
think
time.
there's like an overarching if there's one sort of overarching idea, I guess, that unifies a lot of these movies, it's this idea that, there's always someone for everyone, but you have to be willing to like open up and let that person in to a certain degree. That's what Punch Drunk Love is about, right? Like it's about someone who presents as sort of fundamentally destined to be alone, who ultimately finds someone that is perfect for them and like makes the choice to sort of
Mhm.
like surrender themselves to that and hope that it will work. And There Will Be Blood sort of a movie about someone who kind of like makes all the wrong choices in terms of like um finding emotional connection and fulfillment and
To tie
ultimately
that
ends
back
up
to
rejected from that.
Magnolia, I would say like there are these relationships of, yeah, you found the right thing and then you squandered it. Like it's possible to
Mm,
find the right thing and lose it or not
mm,
deserve it, throw it
mm.
away, cast it aside.
The goddamn regret.
God damn regret.
Don't let
Jason
everybody
Robards fucking.
don't let everybody ever tell you that life is short, life is long, it's long.
So I've watched five, right? Five of these PTA movies for this particular rewatch. This is the first one where I'm like, okay, somebody is confidently better than Robards now. Because I did
Yeah.
Boogie Nights, Magnolia, Licorice
Mhm.
Pizza, Inherent Vice, and now The Master. And I'm like, Philip Seymour Hoffman is now wearing the laurels. This is I know we could make the case for Joaquin, the physical performance,
I
all
would
that
make
stuff.
I
To me, maybe just because Her is the very next year, and it's much more subtle and it's much more reined in. It's softer, and that's more to my taste than this kind of like physical thing that he's got going here. Philip
Mhm.
Seymour Hoffman, this is the greatest performance of Philip Seymour Hoffman's career, and that's as like a lifelong Synecdoche, New York five-star masterpiece guy.
Mm,
This is the shit here. This
mm.
he is on fucking fire from the
This is the
moment he shows
diamond.
up. I just
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. Like, it's a movie that has so much like beautiful depth to it, but also fundamentally like is what it is because those two central
Mhm.
performances are played by those two central actors. It's the role Joaquin was born to play, and it's the role that like makes the most perfect career capstone for Phil Hoffman.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, yeah, everything is just elevated to this level of incredible reverie by those two performances. They are like the core of it. And that's
I
not
would
like
make
to that shouldn't be interpreted as like, everything else in the movie can't quite rise to that level because that's not true at all. It's just that those two performances are such linchpins to
Mhm.
what
Mhm.
the whole thing is,
Right.
that it's impossible to imagine it working if you swap out either one of those actors.
No,
Yeah.
it would collapse.
I would make the case that the you could argue category fraud for Hoffman and supporting, but it's really because they wanted both of them to win. But and it's like I would make the argument that neither of them going home with gold that night is the greatest whiff in the Academy's history. Like it's so obvious.
It's
Walt
certainly egregious, but
Walt's wins
also
supporting for Django.
Which is
Excuse me.
bullshit.
Who the fuck won Best Actor?
Oh my God.
It's 2012.
2012 Academy Awards.
It's not Ben Affleck. That's what won Best Picture,
Yeah,
but he didn't win
oh
Best Actor for
God.
that.
no.
That was, they gave Best Actor to, oh yeah, Daniel Day-Lewis for Lincoln, which is a
Great
fantastic fucking
performance.
Yeah,
performance.
It's a great performance.
it's
I'm
not
not
as good
gonna.
as Joaquin.
I'm not.
It's
No, I
not.
wouldn't say so.
It's
I would
It's
just
not.
not
not.
Yeah,
it's
I would
not
say
It's
it's not
certainly
as
Joaquin.
good
much
as
more.
either of the performances that Daniel Day-Lewis has given in
Oh
Paul Thomas
no,
Anderson films.
no, definitely
Yeah.
not.
But
Hmm.
And it's more boring. Like it's more of like you're playing a historical figure in a biopic by a great American director
it's
XYZ.
a great impression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but it's a thoughtful impression because it's not. I will give it lots of credit for not being
It's got life and interiority
yes,
to it in a way that
and
most biopics do
even
not
just the
have.
voice, even just the way that he plays the voice. Daniel Day-Lewis is beyond reproach. We're not gonna fault him for
No.
this,
No,
but
I mean,
And
it was a bad decision.
and also, if I'm being honest, I think this is my favorite Amy Adams performance too. Even though
yeah.
like clearly third on the list, it's an incredible turn.
She's on fire because she
The
goes
shit
from
where
this to Her to
Remember when
Arrival.
she and then she fell off the cliff and we never saw her again.
Yeah, I guess you got sharp objects if you're in the TV. But seriously, I think she's just as good in Her. I might put Her over this.
She's
It's
really good at
close.
her.
It's again, it's a warmer, delicate performance. It's a thornier, colder, darker
Mhm.
performance, and just as good in both. I ultimately have to give the edge to Arrival just because she is the motion
The
picture.
beating heart and soul of that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's my second
for
favorite,
sure.
I
but
think.
she's doing like sick ass Lady Macbeth shit in this
Oh,
movie.
dude,
It's
Yeah.
the
crazy.
bit with the close up where she's like, "Look at my eyes, now turn them
Uh,
black." I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa,
Woo!
what the
Yeah.
fuck?
She's basically like doing Angela Lansbury in the Manchurian Candidate level shit here.
Yeah.
Oh
The
wait,
the
which
there are a million. I think Ryley and I have even talked about this as a trope of like the disaffected hand job, the Yorgos Lanthimos special. This is maybe the best one of all. Although Emma Stone in The Favorite, that's also quite up
That
there.
is pretty fucking
Yeah.
fun.
I like first episode of Breaking Bad.
It works. It works so well because of how like impassive Adams is in, giving direction, but also because of like Phil Hoffman, bless him, the
Yeah.
most amazing orgasm sounds in the
Ow!
world.
Say it.
Ow!
No more of that boy's hooch. Say it.
Oh man.
I just have that is the most like you get that wave you get when you kind of want to kill yourself after you finish. It's just like I've never believed that more in an actor.
Yeah,
I think that
bro, that
casting
feels
Jesse
him.
Plemons as the son of Philip Seymour Hoffman and Amy
That is
Adams
so, and
is
they
so
whole make a whole
good.
bit about like, yeah, I can
Yeah.
tell he's your son because he
Yeah, they
looks so
do.
much like you.
Until Oppenheimer, this was also the greatest performance of Rami Malek's career. Jake, you're
Yeah.
not on here to rebut me, so do so in silence.
Uh,
I'm only talking about movies.
And this is a similar thing to Mr. Robot for a lot of the time. I've only seen the first season of that show, but it's like that dude is really good when he is not saying anything.
He's just kind of like getting cut.
Yeah.
mhm. That seems fucking crazy.
It's so fucking funny. So funny. I feel like there's other movie versions of that where it's like, the new bride has the hots for the main character kind of thing, but this is like one of the funniest versions of it that I can think of.
Yeah.
Because it's just like
The-
it's like the splinters underneath the surface of again like this whole thing that Quell shows up and is such a disruptor that he immediately reveals all the cracks in the veneer.
and
Mhm.
I just think if I was like he takes her hand and places it back on her. And I think if I was rejected by Freddie Quell, I would have walked into the ocean. Because like,
Just a man who is a walking libido.
yeah. It was like, what's going on? What did I do? What could I have done?
He was giving
One
me
one
the
of
signal.
the one of the biggest laughs for me this time is the scene early on the boat where they're like listening to Dodd, like they're listening to one of his like speeches or something on repeat, basically, and they're just sort of
Oh
sitting
yeah,
there in the
man is
listening station.
not an animal.
Yeah, that's right. I was trying to remember what he said. And it's just like it suspends you in this bit for like up to a minute, I think, and then like Freddie just picks up a piece of paper and just writes, "Do you want to fuck?" on it, and the way he
The
does,
smiley face is what gets me. He draws a
yeah,
smiley
the
Mm.
face
smiley,
with a nose.
yeah, it's
And
great
his
because like,
face is like so honest when he shows it to her too. He's like doing this like
yeah,
kind of look.
He's like a fucking mix of the Tasmanian Devil and Pepe Le Pew. Like
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
it it's the kind of funny where it's like that someone who's funny is funny because they have one bit that they always do and it's always funny, and that's like him at this point in the movie, and then you're just
Mhm.
waiting, and then he just does it, and it's still funny.
Yeah.
I do get a
Yeah.
good laugh out of it. It's a little daisies coded where he takes the girl out on the date. They're like hooking up in the back of the photo lab. And she's
Ah,
like, "You want to
yeah.
go out later?" And you just cut. He's like fucking passed out in the booth.
My man's just cooked on that jet fuel.
Wasted.
I love the entire sequence of him and the lights, and it's a little warm. It's hot.
Yeah, that's that
He's
got
like
a big
running
laugh from me
around
this
like
time.
yeah, oh man, just funny.
It's how long he keeps the politeness up for
Yeah.
that makes it
Yeah,
funnier. Like he's
yeah.
literally got the lamp in his
They're like
face, and the
right
guy's still
here.
trying to be nice about it.
Uh,
It's like that
what
feels a lot like Barry Egan
There's
punching out the glass panes in the beginning of Punch Drunk
there's
Love as
actually a
well.
really similar,
Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say there's a really similar moment in Punch Drunk Love where Barry like trashes the bathroom in the restaurant, and then the guy comes up to him while he's at the date. It's like, "Sir, could I please talk to you for a minute?" Like insists on keeping it professional, and then he's like, "Sir, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave." He says it like 3 times. And he's like, "Sir, I'm gonna bash your fucking head in." And it's just this great moment of like maintaining this air of professionalism up to a point and then completely like throwing it away. And it's a great like comic thing that happens in that movie a couple of times and in this movie a few times as well.
What happened to Joaquin Phoenix, man?
I think to answer it simply, seriously, it's the same thing that happens to a lot of leading men, is that there is, we've said this kind of thing about Brad Pitt before. Joaquin Phoenix is unique in terms of his vibe, in terms of his look, like just his face. He feels like somebody that should be more character actor roles, but has
Mhm.
clearly ascended to the point of like talking about the master, talking about her, talking about you were never really here. Clearly is a lead. So you build these projects around him, but just I think to put it simply, Paul Thomas Anderson's material is good. Spike Jonze's material is good. Lynn Ramsey's material is good. Mike Mills' material is good. Ridley Scott's material fucking sucks. Ari Aster's material fucking sucks. No offense. to the people that may or may not like one or both of those movies. Like just
Todd Phillips' material fucking sucks.
yeah,
Yeah,
Todd
I was
Haynes'
gonna say.
material good? Question mark. We'll never know. But with
I was gonna
Joaquin,
say.
We'll see
with
it,
with
thankfully.
the lead actor of being Joaquin Phoenix, we'll never know. With
Yeah, yeah.
Pedro, maybe.
Thank you, Pedro, for your service.
Indeed.
I was gonna say, like, he's had movies where he's worked better or worse than other movies over the years, but Joker was a huge inflection point in terms of Phoenix
And winning the
saturation.
award.
Yeah,
Yeah.
He's
yeah.
only since that time the only I mean I 5-starred. Come on, come on. I really like that movie. I don't just like it. I really like it. So it's a big caveat. It's a big counterexample. But since that Joker win, none of it has been good in my opinion. Like Joker 2, Napoleon. There's another
Oh
big one that I feel
fuck.
like I'm skipping that
Bo
I
is
haven't
afraid.
what.
Who's
Well,
the
yeah, Bo is Afraid in Eddington, yes, but I feel like there's one more that
Yeah,
I'm
I feel
not
like there
thinking.
is two, and I can't think of it either. Um,
Maybe there isn't.
yeah, God, fucking
He's
Napoleon,
become
man.
more selective with projects.
I just think that when I
And he
look
keeps
at
picking
him
shit
now,
ones.
Yeah.
I just see a lot of ego. I see a lot of like, like Joker 2 is a great example of like, we're just gonna
Mhm.
build this whole thing around me. Like you've got Gaga in that movie and she barely registers as a thing that is in the
Yeah,
movie, which just is like, okay.
psychotic. It's a colossal waste of her talent.
Mm.
But yeah, like that first Joker Oscar win, I just pretended it was for You Were Never Really Here, which is my favorite performance by him. So I just like overrode it mentally.
I pretended it was for this because down to the shoulder blade, the weird shit that he is doing
Mm.
Freddie Quell in Joker.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I said this in the group chat the other day. This is one of my favorite performances. Him in this movie, and it's not like a. Don't take this as a like me downplaying how good Phil Hoffman is, because I'm not doing that either. But Phoenix in this to me is one of the most impressive performances I've seen in a movie in terms of not just the physicality of it, but in terms of like the emotional complexity of it. In every given moment, he presents as a man who is convincingly and realistically negotiating a dozen different emotional states and like completely failing to master any of them, like as the character.
I think it's a
And it's
form of performance that can be bad
yeah,
easily.
for sure.
Or not even
Mhm.
just bad, like
Mhm.
I'm thinking about our good friend, the maestro himself, Bradley Cooper, Superman's father. Um, and like there's this image of him that I have, and it's from an onstage portrayal of the Elephant Man, where he's like got all the thing, and he's all elephant manned up. And it's like actors, I think about Leo DiCaprio is he's the star of one battle after another. He has spent so long trying to avoid being Titanic Leonardo DiCaprio ever again, or Romeo and Juliet Leonardo DiCaprio, that he for a long time like just would have these like tics and like weird things that he would do in his movies with his body. And therefore when I see this, like when you see like this like Popeye scrunched up face that Joaquin's doing right at the start, I think, here we go. It's going to be this whole thing. But he wins me over so immediately and in so many ways, adding so much unexpected complexity to how he's doing these things that almost circles it back around from like, okay, this is like an obvious, almost like baiting good performance to like, no, it's so alienating, but so dense and rich throughout the entire time. He never leans into something that feels simple.
Mhm.
Because like it totally is like such actor bullshit. Like that's all like completely born of like Brando, down to
Sure.
Brando in The Godfather having a dental piece so he could make that face all the time.
Whatever the
And
fuck he's doing in
yeah,
Apocalypse Now.
yeah. And
Yeah.
Phoenix in this having a dental piece that makes him make that face the whole time.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
just like weird, indulgent, stupid shit that like 99 times out of 100
I
is terrible, but that one time it's some of the best
Mhm.
stuff you'll ever see.
Yeah. I will always think about Laurence Olivier talking to Dustin Hoffman on the
Yeah.
set of Marathon Man, where he's like,
Have you
why
tried
don't you
acting?
just simply try acting?
My only response to Mr. Olivier, Sir Olivier, Dustin Hoffman better. Uh, he is. What
Yeah.
you're gonna tell me the Graduate's not clearing most of that guy's career? Because it is. Or Midnight Cowboy? Come on.
It
I'm
works. That's the
processing
thing.
here. Give me a sec.
When it works, it works.
Conversely, on
You
the other
don't.
hand of that, Martin Scorsese told Griffin Dunne to avoid sex and sleep during the shoot of After Hours. And at some point during the filming, Griffin Dunne had sex. He got laid, and the next day he comes into work, and Marty, during a take, is immediately like cut. He's like, "Did you have sex? Did you do that? I know you did that."
Yeah.
True story. I wasn't there, but
I mean, directors psychologically tormenting their actors. This tale as old as time.
Dan the
Yeah.
man,
Mm.
Davy Fincher.
Sometimes crosses over into like actual criminal activity, but you know.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know what they did to that kid on the set of Come and See, but it wasn't good.
We can
It
we can
wasn't good.
circle back here to Dancer in the Dark, and it's
Yeah.
all come full
Uh-huh.
circle.
Mhm.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Uh,
That's a man who should probably be in prison, but
it sounds like she gave as good as she got, though.
that's probably
Like,
I've seen her in action.
yeah,
I
throw
wouldn't
hands.
fuck with her.
she
No.
knows how to fight back.
Yeah, she's hardy.
Yeah.
Those Iceland those Nordic folk are hardy
Yeah.
folk.
Yeah, the
Trying to get
Scandinavians.
trying to get Leve into a fucking Lars von Trier picture or something. See how she holds up.
God.
Oh, the master. Riley, this is actually like the second time you and I have talked about this in a podcast format. The other one never
It
saw the
is,
light of
yeah.
day to I don't remember what, but it was back. I mean, it was like 2021. It was after Licorice Pizza that we did it.
Mm,
And we
mm,
bonded it with There Will Be Blood. And I think like a lot of our takes on that one were really about like how each movie represented looking at masculinity or like the identity of the American people through these periods of time, which is I just think that kind of like what we were talking about a lot on the show at that point. But it is
mm,
interesting to reflect on that between this and then continuing in Inherent Vice because there really is like a three-film progression from the turn of the century after the Second World War, and then finally with Inherent Vice, the kind of like the end of the summer of love hippie into like 70s Watergate into 80s Reaganism type stuff. And it is interesting that like well, I guess to go back to Punch Drunk Love, which you said that you watched, that was his last foray into a modern, like 21st century setting. And it was barely the 21st century setting. I always think about how like
mm.
for years that was his most contemporary movie, and it involves a scene where Barry Egan takes a call at a Verizon wireless phone booth, which is like, oh, okay. And then we immediately hit this period skid in 2007, and we don't like it's just all period movies until you get to now, One Battle After Another, which is
Mm.
probably kind of more of an indeterminate, like we were talking about The Long Walk. I imagine One Battle After Another will not have like a super duper clear, this is when it's set, but we're
Mm.
Yeah,
finally getting
because
back to the modern
you
day
can
a little.
tell you can tell from the trailers that like there's a time jump. Like Leo is playing a
Yeah,
version of the character, and then like 15 years or something passes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how we readjust after this kind of period of
Yeah.
looking through these older eras.
I have to say, like, the combination of obviously it being a new fucking Paul Thomas Anderson movie and just some of the early hype that's come out about it. I don't
Yeah,
know if I've been more excited about a movie in a while. Like
yeah,
this is just like it has lined up every element that needs to be lined up for it to be like this is going to be major for me.
yeah. I think the
I,
last two for me would have been Brutalist and Nickel Boys, which I saw like within a pretty short period of time, maybe even the same
mm,
weekend. So those were
Mhm.
kind of like the last two that were like popped off. But I certainly have much more of a relationship with Paul Thomas Anderson than I do with like Brady Corbet, for instance.
yeah, yeah. So
I
I would
think
be
Also, just
amazed if
Leo, right? Leo back.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
I think for me
yeah.
the last one was The Batman, which is like not even totally cinema related.
I'm very excited. It almost sounds too good to be true, but
We'll
If there's
see.
one guy that can do it, it's our brother Paulie.
Weird to be like 200 pages into a book and be like, I have no idea what the fuck this movie is going to be about.
Yeah.
I mean, I know like he's got a daughter. And
I kind of had that with White Noise when I read about half of that before the movie came out,
yeah.
where I was just like, how the
Well,
hell are you?
when I think about that book, there is like a thing that happens halfway through, and then the rest of it
Yeah.
happens. So only reading half of like I
Mm.
see how that would be confusing. God, I love that
Mhm.
world. Everybody read Underworld. That's my conclusion for this talk for this informal Thomas Pynchon episode is go buy yourself a copy of Don DeLillo's Underworld and read that instead.
I want to
I already
read. I
own it.
want to.
I do need to read it.
Want to read that one and Libra. Those are the two of his that I want to get to amongst the mountain of books by other people that I want to get to.
Relatable.
It's
Yeah,
so
any
frustrating that I can't just pound those out in 2 hours like I can movies.
I know. It is disappointing. Takes like brain power and time.
Yeah.
I don't
I have to,
always have those
I have,
things.
I have to like sit down and not do anything else.
Yeah.
I mean,
getting my-
audiobooks exist.
Man.
I don't
I
retain
don't-
any information.
That's me too. That it's funny, it's like ironic doing a podcast, but that's me too. If I try to listen to it, it doesn't stick the way that it does when I read it.
It's so much easier for like my mind to wander.
Mhm.
Where like you'll do that during a podcast and you won't really have missed anything. But
Yeah.
like you do that during an audiobook and it's like I missed a character introduction. Who the fuck is speaking?
Right. Paul Thomas Anderson. Great career. Interesting, jagged, unexpected. Burst onto the scene, never really let go of that sense that he just was one of the guys. Like that he was just like he showed up, everything you were gonna see, everything he made, you're gonna eventually see, and that's still true. But I think has
like
maintained an interesting edge the entire time.
he and Tarantino have been like the most enduring products of the
Yeah.
90s. I mean, I guess you could say Soderbergh as well, even though he started in '89. But
Yeah,
like
I think
Anderson and
like Linklater, Fincher, I think partially because of their streaming endeavors, but it's an undeniable downturn in the public eye. An undeniable
Yeah.
the last Fincher that really mattered to people was either Gone Girl or really might have even been Social Network.
it was good. It was Gone Girl. It was Gone Girl
Yeah.
for
People
sure.
still love Amy Dunn.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's kind of internet-y. Not that that's wrong, and the culture is more internet than it ever was.
Is the social
I-
network not internet-y?
Yeah.
I think the Social Network had a reach that was not just Twitter letterbox type of people. That
Everybody-
I don't know that Gone Girl has.
Yeah, but
I
Everybody
know
everybody
that
read Gone
Mank
Girl.
does
though.
not have it. I
Yeah.
know that it's gone now. Mindhunter kinda had it, kinda.
Mindhunter's way more internet-y than
Yeah,
either of those.
Agreed.
Yeah.
That's the nature of the streaming game. I
At the
think.
same time, there was Mindhunter art hanging in the U.S. Capitol building. So
Yeah.
Mm.
the internet is real life, which is why we're all so excited for the Social Network Part 2, right?
Yes.
Can we
Aaron
just get my
Sorkin.
buddy, my close personal friend Holt McCallany back in good movies and good products in general?
Yeah, perhaps.
That's
I
a
could-
fucking Pynchon ass name.
Yeah. I could go for Jonathan Groff too, but
Yeah.
It's really confounding to me that he's not in the Merrily We Roll Along movie that Linklater is making. It's fucking
He
Ben
would be.
Platt.
Ben Platt's a good fit. Sorry.
Yeah, but fuck him.
Yeah. Sure. We're back at Dear Evan Hansen. We've come maybe
Full
not full circle,
circle.
but something like it.
It's
Yeah,
all coming
very
up,
good
Ben.
stuff. I think these are really the two most difficult PTA movies, but I always really enjoy going back to them. Like it feels
Yeah, I had a blast.
fresh
I had a
every
blast
time.
watching them.
Yeah.
They're both kind of like trying to catch smoke,
Mhm.
but we made a valiant effort of that here tonight.
Indeed.
Mm.
So, thank you guys all so much for listening. We look forward to coming back and talking to you once one battle after another drops and we've all seen it here soon. And that'll wrap up our PTA, and we'll look forward to the rest of the fall release slate, where I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to talk about more cool stuff and probably some spooky things coming up as we are now at the tail end. Well, we're not quite at the tail end, but we're nearing the tail end of September and moving into one of the great parts of the movie calendar, which is where we just get to throw on goop and gore and the creepy, crawly, atmospheric stuff and talk about all that. So anyway, thank you guys for listening. We hope you catch us on the next one. We'll talk to y'all later. Bye, everybody.